As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. After choosing a life of crime at a young age, Henry Hill rises up in the ranks of the Vario crew. Alongside his friends Jimmy and Tommy, the trio run roughshod and make money hand over fist through violence and intimidation. As the 1970s turn into the 1980s, things change, and through Henry's greed and mistakes, the party soon comes to an end. Welcome to another feature presentation of Midnight Double Feature, and on this episode, we'll be covering 1990's Goodfellas, directed by Martin Scorsese.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another feature presentation of Midnight Double Feature. My God, Colin, we are here. We're covering Goodfellas, 1990. Directed by Martin Scorsese.
What's up, buddy?
Oh man, nothing much, man. Other than I am absolutely excited about this. I am elated. Last week when we covered The Craft, you described us as two ships in the night who just sailed past each other.
Yeah.
And you know, you're the Black Pearl, I'm the HMAS Dauntless, and we have sailed in opposite ends of the planet and we're about to dock together, Colin.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to do a docking sequence of epic proportions. And yes, I know how that sounds.
We're that Umbrella Academy meme as they look at each other. Well, this is that moment.
Indeed it is. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't heard us before, we are Midnight Double Feature. We're going to be covering this movie, Goodfellas. We're going to be going through it. We're going to be breaking it down. We're going to be spoiling it. So this is your official spoiler warning. I'm also, I know that we both love Sopranos, and to me that they're both linked. These two movies are very linked, and
Sure.
not in terms of story, but just in terms of like DNA. So I think I'm going to issue a cautionary spoiler warning for Sopranos. Just because there is so much that happens in Goodfellas that we probably can relate to Sopranos as well, and you know there's a lot of like stuff that we can compare it to in those two things. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to come up, but I'm just going to go ahead and let you know that for Sopranos especially, bit of a spoiler warning.
I feel like their Venn diagrams overlap severely, for sure.
100%. Well, I mean, 26 actors moved over from Goodfellas to Sopranos, which is wild. But but anyway, so yeah, we're going to be going through it. We're going to be swearing. We're going to be breaking it down. If you haven't listened to us before, thank you. We have a Patreon. Please consider membership. It's just $5 a month. It's patreon.com/Midnight Double Feature. We are on episode 72, I think. So we're going to jump off here after this episode and go ahead and record Street Fighter. Because the quality of these two movies are exactly the same. And there's definitely a theme this week. No, but actually this week's was pretty awesome because we don't do it a lot, but I would like to do it a bit more often, is kind of like give our members the choice to choose the movie that they want to hear, right? That they want to hear covered. So this week was your pick, and you were like, I'm going to throw it to the members this week. And I'm like, cool, man, that's awesome. So we took all of our members' sort of like choices, we threw them in a hat, so to speak. And thank you to Patrick. Thank you to everyone who submitted their responses.
Yeah.
But Patrick Harrington, the legend that he is, won the toss, and he chose Street Fighter. He actually chose Red Dawn, but he's like, I don't want to cover it on the bonus feed. I want everyone to hear it. And I'm like, oh, God. So he's like, Street Fighter, baby. So yeah, we watched that. I nearly passed away, but I don't want to spoil my thoughts on that movie. So yeah, if you do want to go check that out, it's patreon.com/Midnight Double Feature. We also have, if you do want to get in touch with us, we have our social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. We're not on Threads, we're not on TikTok, so fuck that thing. And we're on Facebook mostly. So we have the After Party on Facebook. That's our Facebook group. That's where people to come together, come to chat. Also, weirdly, like Facebook kind of gave us the option to start a After Party chat, like an actual messenger chat.
Oh, yeah.
And more and more people have been chiming in there, so you can join that as well. Just to chat about whatever you're watching. If you went to Barbenheimer, the event of all events, you can talk about that in the chat. You know, everyone's talking about it. Oppenheimer, everyone's talking about Barbie.
It's like a little Discord.
Yeah, exactly, like a little Discord. Sorry, I meant to say we're not on X.
Oh yeah. You dead name Twitter.
Fucking Elon over there. I do like X videos though. Anyway, so
he buys 2 more companies and names them both X, and it's like, hey. We see what you're doing.
I see what you're doing. He's completed his Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah.
Porn. Oh shit. All right, man. But like man. It's so funny because this is the first time we're covering a Scorsese movie. We have never covered a Scorsese movie.
Damn.
And I think you and I would consider him one of the best directors of all time. I think a lot of people would as well. You know, Cape Fear, Mean Streets, Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, Casino, Goodfellas. Even
The
in
Last
his,
Temptation of Christ.
right. Even in his later years, right now, I consider the more modern era of Scorsese is Hugo and Wolf of Wall Street and Silence and The Irishman and we're about to get Killers of the Flower Moon and all that stuff. And this guy he's just prolific, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's nothing on here that you and I are going to talk about that hasn't been spoken about already about Martin Scorsese. Like, the guy is just he loves film, he loves cinema, you know, and so much so that it's become a meme, right? I mean, like, I think in 2015 he gave that very famous interview and he talked about the MCU as amusement parks and stuff like that, and you know, it's become a meme, right? Like, you've got the black and white image of Martin Scorsese's face, and it's just like the word cinema, right? But Goodfellas, this, I guess before you and I get into our thoughts, what I wanted to do is kind of like change things up a little bit here. We had some pretty awesome audience interaction with this movie. So thank you so much to everyone for commenting. Thank you so much for everyone for interacting. Because I think it kind of like, once we announced this movie on our socials, I think people knew that this was such a big episode for us, and it is very intimidating because it's Goodfellas. Like, it's one of the best. It's considered one of the best movies of all time. You know, we had the same approach with The Dark Knight when we were like, "Fuck, man, this is actually intimidating." We did the same thing with Heat when it's like, "Fuck, how do we approach this thing?" You know. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and read off the listener comments right here at the opening. You know, just so we can set the scene a little bit, you know, just so we can get the ball rolling, if you will. So the first person I'm going to read is Danielle Cutter. She starts, Danielle.
Also a Green Room member, yeah.
Yep, group expert, Green Room member, Danielle Cutter. She says, "Nobody's going to jail, Karen." But she continues. She's like, "You guys may have already recorded, but I still wanted to say, forget The Godfather. Goodfellas is the best gangster movie of all time. Liotta, De Niro, and Pesci are all at their best, and the script is smart and funny and full of satire. The movie is definitely quotable, and all gangster-related entertainment since then has borrowed heavily from it. The movie manages to make you care about some truly terrible people, and you feel for them when they're forced to deal with the consequences of their actions. This is also maybe my favorite Scorsese picture of all time too." Look at that, dude. She used a picture instead of movie. I love that. You know, even when people are talking about Scorsese, they're very classy. I love it.
Well, Danielle's nothing but class. I mean, come on.
Right, exactly. Danielle is nothing but class. She says, "Excited to hear your thoughts." So thank you so much, Danielle. Really appreciate it, man.
Hell yeah. I tell you what, I will take, speaking of the devil, Nick Patty Whack, Patrick Harrington. This movie is so fucking good. It's definitely a top 10 favorite of all time. The performances are amazing. The soundtrack is pure fire. Scorsese turns in one of his best films. I can't hear the song Layla without picturing the Lufthansa death montage in my head. That's 100, and I'm so glad he mentioned that because, like, you, just real quick, had you ever heard that song before this movie?
No.
Yeah,
No.
see, me either. I was super young, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So I'm really glad
Take Shelter as well. This introduced Take Shelter to me as well.
Oh yeah, great.
Yeah.
Sorry, Patrick. Yeah, sorry. I would have forgotten all about that. Let me see here. Maybe a hot take, but this is better than The Godfather. Best.
Damn, two group experts and two Patreon members weighing in.
Yeah,
taking shots.
Yeah, right away.
You, Francis Ford.
Maybe hot take, this better than The Godfather. Best mob movie of all time. It's also funny that half of this cast went over to The Sopranos. Now go home and get your fucking shine box.
I love it. Thank you so much, Patty. Okay, so I'm going to hit Floyd Fry. Thanks so much, Floyd. Floyd is awesome, man, by the way. I mean, we say this all the time.
Yeah, I listened to the Pop List for like the last fucking 2 days. If you haven't, Floyd Fry, our friend, his podcast, The Pop List, absolutely incredible. Probably my favorite podcast, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. He's also got his own little thing now called Floyd Fry Cooking, and it's just
TikTok,
him like cooking shit, man.
Some bomb ass food.
Dude.
We never do this. We never plug. But we love Floyd, and B,
right.
We love food. Obviously, if you saw the two of us, we would fit in with the cast of this movie. No, but yeah, definitely
what I can't fit in is the window on my screen because that's how big I am.
What I can't fit in is my fucking car.
Right.
No, yeah, definitely check Floyd out. We love Floyd.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So he said, I just did my 20th rewatch recently. So good. He says, I find it very interesting how ruthless and detached they are, yet how emotional Jimmy is in the phone booth after finding out about Tommy's death. You almost think they would never let themselves be so emotionally invested, but human nature refuses to let you not care for those around you. Which is, yeah, man, that is only an observation that Floyd would make. Like it's so well thought out and so well put. Because yeah, you don't when you look at like movies like this and the mafia and stuff like that, you always think about the violence and you always think about the money and like all the superficial shit that the first half of this movie is really sort of setting up, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all you always think about that stuff. You never really think about the fact that these guys are humans and they did develop these bonds with themselves and together, and like it just totally comes out for Jimmy there. But yeah, man, like we have a couple of like smaller comments as well. So Jason Tick, he says, must I forever be a beggar? He says, second on my favorite films of all time list, absolutely fantastic. Ollie Brooks, thanks so much, Ollie. He says Casino and The Departed are his best for me. Emily Hitchcock as well, one of my all-time favorites. Love the narration too. So off the back of Danielle and Patrick's comment about The Godfather, right? I was like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'm going to make a poll. I'm going to take some stock. I'm going to go out there and take some votes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, all right, which is the better film? And I thought about the wording here. I was like, favorite or best? But I was like, man, I can't really decide. So I'm just going to say better and leave like the reasoning to the people. So I was like, which is the better film, The Godfather 1972 or Goodfellas 1990? The results of the poll: Goodfellas by 60%.
Ooh, not a huge margin. Not a huge margin.
Not a huge margin. But it's funny because like Goodfellas is considered the modern mafia classic, right? And then like you had Godfather, which is kind of like an era defining film, and it's like everyone looks back at it and is like, this is filmmaking. And I revisited The Godfather a couple of weeks ago and Godfather 2. I have never seen Godfather 3 to this day. But Godfather 1, man, for me, that's my personal favorite. I absolutely adore that movie. Like that is absolutely, like I can't tell you how much I love that movie. Like I'm not even kidding. It requires patience, sorry. But I think it's incredibly rewarding. What do you think?
Yeah, I've seen all three of them. I mean, I love the second one because I just love the time hopping around and stuff, and you see Michael's character kind of like develop and change. But there is something about the first one that feels so like, I don't know. It's
Like a
just
full
such
story. It feels like a
yes,
full, like complete story. Whereas
right.
Godfather 2 is bringing in a lot more things, I think.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And like, it's also trying to juggle who Michael is becoming as how Michael is becoming a man versus what's going on with Vito. And it's been actually been a while since I've seen the first one, but I like all of them. But yeah, Godfather 1, I feel like a lot of people always Godfather 1 gets overshadowed a lot, and it's like no, hang on, it's still like Godfather 2 is amazing, don't get me wrong. It's got two of the best actors that ever lived,
Right.
like in it, three of the best actors. I no, because is Marlon Brando into and flashbacks and stuff?
No. He's
No,
not into.
Okay, I thought he was in for flashbacks and shit, but anyways, yeah, but still, it's like I think the Godfather 1 always gets a little bit overshadowed. It's still the Godfather, it's still the Godfather, but I feel like it always gets a little bit left behind.
Yeah, I think so too. Everything I remember about, like, when I hear the words Godfather, I just think of the first one, like, like the whole thing with the end when they're in at the funeral, and the first person who comes to like ask you for the meeting will be the one that betrays you, kind of thing, and all that stuff. And Michael going to Italy, and he's kind of like fling blowing up in the car there, and yeah, all of it, man. But anyway, let's talk about Goodfellas. Here we are. Now, Colin, I did something absolutely unprecedented. Absolutely unprecedented. And you're not going to believe me, but I actually did do it. When we announced this episode 2 weeks ago, by the way, right after we dropped our episode on The Craft, I bought and purchased Nicholas Pileggi's book, Wise Guys.
Oh,
and
nice.
I read it cover to cover in that time. And I
Hell
was
yeah.
like, fuck yeah, man. This is someone who takes like dude, how long did I take to finish American Psycho? Like,
Dude.
I'm not even kidding. It was insane.
There were babies born multiple times.
Exactly. Generations.
Yeah.
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 I loved Wise Guys, man. Like, it was as propulsive as this movie was. I was just obsessed with it. It was so good, such a great read. Very easy to read, very easy to digest. You hear it all in sort of like Henry's voice, because obviously Goodfellas is ingrained in my head, so I just hear Ray Liotta's voice as we're reading it.
Sure.
As I'm reading it. So I guess what I'm going to be doing is, as we kind of like go through this, and by the way, just for clarity, listeners, I'm going to be covering the first half of this movie, and then Colin's going to pick it up from the scene where Spider gets shot in the foot, right? I think that's where yeah. So, I'm going to kind of like point out like what's true, what's not true, and like what happened, and it might get annoying, so I might stop, but we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I thought the book was fantastic, and I thought this adaptation, as an adaptation, is outstanding. Like, this is such a. We can move on to Goodfellas now. This is such a tight script. Like, it's 2 hours 20, but there's no fat here. There's no there's nothing that you can really sort of trim out. Thelma Schoonmaker is Martin Scorsese's editor, and she is legendary, man. Like, she cut this movie so incredibly well. There are like 5 montages in this movie. It feels like one big montage, and you never feel exhausted. You never, like, the pacing of it is completely 100% satisfying. I mean, like, what am I saying, man? It's one of the greatest movies of all time. My history with this, I did not watch this movie, growing up or anything like that, obviously, because it's fucking violent. But I first time I watched this must have been around 2010, something like that. I was in high school, and I had actually watched Casino first. Casino was my sort of like introduction to this whole thing. And when I watched Goodfellas, I was like, oh, it's not, it's a little smaller scale in Casino. But obviously, the more time that I spent with it, 13 years since, Goodfellas has obviously emerged as the better one. Goodfellas is the more intimate one, the more tighter one. Like Casino feels like a shotgun blast. Like it just rain. Like it's just so much spread.
Hmm.
The whole thing with Sharon Stone's character and James Woods' character and all that stuff. And like what I like about Casino is that De Niro's the main character. I mean, like De Niro gets some amazing scenes to chew on in that movie. But yeah, like Goodfellas just feels like the more complete sort of like document. If I want to be critical, but I mean, like I love Casino as well. Still, man, like Casino's Joe Pesci. I like Joe Pesci in Casino more than I like him in Goodfellas. I think that's just a thing for me. But anyway, Colin, what's your history with Goodfellas, man?
Um, man, I honestly I cannot remember the first time that I saw this. I know I was younger. I think I was, I don't know, maybe in my teens, like 14, 15 when I saw this. But it blew me away. I remember watching like this and Shawshank Redemption around the same time.
Ooh,
And
nice.
that for the first time, and that's, they really fucking rocked my world. And this kind of spawned like my fascination with like mafia stuff, and like I just read a lot and like listened to a lot of stuff about just like mafia culture in general, and I know a few things of like the behind the scenes stuff of this, like not behind the scenes stuff, but the real life, like what was really going on with Tommy and Paulie and Karen and blah blah blah, and like what really happened, and we can get into it as we go along. But I learned a little bit of the stuff from behind the scenes just because I found it to be so interesting and so well done. And I mean, I don't think it's an overstatement to say that I've probably put this movie on over 100 times to go to sleep at night. Like Goodfellas is 100% all right, I'm going to bed. Okay. Da, 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 da. And it's one of the best movies of all time. And I think that you've got, some of the not only do you have, Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro. But those guys are always going, well, it's like mustard and like mustard and ketchup. They just go together. That's just what they do. And I feel like this might have been the beginning of that, right? Where they did like De Niro and Pesci did movies together. Like I feel like they did multiple ones, but I feel like it might have started
Yeah,
with this.
so they were in Raging Bull together with
Hmm.
with Scorsese as well. I mean, that was in the 70s, and then
I think that
yeah,
was
I
in the
think after
80s.
was it in the 80s? Maybe
I
I'm
think
just
it
getting
might have
mixed up.
been. I don't know.
But yeah. But I don't think this was the first one, but I think this was the most popular one.
Gotcha. I'm thinking of Raging Bull. Yeah, because I'm thinking of him punching him in the face in the kitchen and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's another unbelievably good movie. But I've all
1980 exactly. Nice.
1980. But I just find this life, any kind of life of crime and stuff like this, very fascinating. Like I love that Ray Liotta is in this as Henry Hill, but then he's also in Blow as George Young's father, and he plays he's getting to kind of see that character be played again, but from a different kind of, it's like I'm playing the same game but a different position now, and I think that's so fucking cool to see him from both sides of it and see him be the person who's committing all this crime and affecting things, and then be somebody on the outside who's affected by it. I've always loved that about Ray Liotta. Not only can he play Henry Hill, he can play the guy's dad later on in his career and be the one who's like, Henry, you shouldn't be doing this, like blah blah blah. And I feel like Ray Liotta, I think his career kind of cooled down as time went on, but still the guy was just, I just don't feel like
He
I
was
ever
working like
right.
like he never took anything as sort of like iconic as Henry Hill,
Sure.
but he would show up in things and be like, "Oh, it's
Dude,
fucking Ray Liotta."
like Copland,
Right.
Killing Them Softly. Like there's so many like great movies that Ray Liotta is in. I think he's in the second Sin City movie. Like the guy worked his ass off, but like I never
He
saw
was in that
anything.
the many saints of Newark, right? like
Oh yeah,
just
yeah,
before
he is.
passed. Yeah.
I never saw him in anything that I was like, man, he was really bad in that. Like, I feel like there's at least a few actors where I can name off the top of my head that I'm like, yeah, he did do that one movie. But Ray Liotta, I feel like he never did anything greater than Goodfellas. I feel like he did really on par movies that were on par with Goodfellas or right around it, but he never really got back to that kind of fame. But he always did extremely well.
Tommy Vercetti in Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Tommy Vercetti.
Yeah.
I think didn't he turn down Tony Soprano?
Oh, did he? That would be interesting.
I might be talking out of my ass, but I want to say I think he did. But anyways, this movie, I can't say anything that hasn't really been said about this movie. And the only thing I can say about it is just kind of like my own personal experience. And it really fascinated me seeing, I hadn't seen this kind of a genre crime movie that moved up through the decades. Like Godfather might jump from like 1910s, 1920s, I think, to like Vito. It might jump between Vito and Michael, but it doesn't move through 1950s, 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It doesn't move through that. And that's why I feel like we were talking a little bit off air about this movie being so dense, is because it's covering a life. It's a man's life. It's, to me, a very similar movie to Goodfellas is Blow. It's just a little bit different. It's about cocaine and the Medellin cartel and stuff. It's just a little bit different. And I think, neither story ends well, really. Like that, like Henry gets out and stuff, but it doesn't, he's looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life. And I think that, obviously, we can sit here and talk about all day about the tracking shot and, all these incredible shots. But I think, the thing that I feel like one of the things that this movie does best is that it lures you in. This is when we kind of talked about this on The Craft, and a lot of like wish fulfillment movies are kind of like this. And
don't talk about that movie.
It was so good. I've watched it twice since then. And I looked at a picture of you while I watched it. No, anyways, I think that this movie does a great job of snagging your ass up. And then when it's kind of like The Siren, you hear this beautiful song and you get pulled in, and then eventually the face turns and her hair turns into snakes and you're like, oh fuck, no. And it's like, there are so many, I think I'm on season 5 of The Sopranos, and I get a little bit more reluctant to watch it now. Because I don't like that we're getting into this. I want to go to the Bada Bing and hang out with Big Puss, and it's like, I can't do that anymore. And it's like, fuck. And now that the characters that you're set up with and the people. Oh,
you don't like Gay Vito?
I'd take him too, but but it's,
you would.
I feel like a lot of these movies do really well with kind of flipping the script on you. And, it's you start eating something and eventually you just get like sick on it. Now you don't really want it anymore. And it's like, oh man. But it just does such a great job of, at the beginning, everything is, the huge wedding and these afternoon dinners with the family. And then by the end of it, it's running around with a paper bag full of guns, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing, man? And everything is just so far off the rails and frantic. But I think this movie is the ultimate kind of like entrapment that makes you love it. And then eventually you're just like, so mad by the end of it. You just, man, it didn't have to be this way. It's like you could have just had fun this whole time, blah blah. But it's like just chugging and eventually choking on it, and it's like you just can't keep taking it in. Eventually it's going to catch up to you. And I think this is probably Martin Scorsese's best movie. I think also a little friend of ours would agree with me, Carlos Freitas. We forgot his comment. I'm going to read his comment. I think that this is one of Marty's masterpieces and the best gangster movie of all time. That's pretty big coming from Carlos. Doesn't make a lot of best of all time statement to me.
He's not hyperbolic.
Right. Not very hyperbolic. So like that caught my attention very much so. It might also be Marty's funniest movie. There are points where we become Henry cackling maniacally at the violence in front of us. They don't make them much better than this. Great comment. I think that pretty much sums up my opening thoughts as well.
That's
But
something that I wanted to mention, because The Sopranos is exactly the same way. I reckon I could make, or someone could make a very strong argument that The Sopranos is a comedy. Like it is absolutely hilarious, and so is Goodfellas. It's this like weird humor of like I
black
don't know.
humor, yeah.
It's the darkest humor, but it's fucking good, man. Like it's so crazy how well it's balanced.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of like it's like two flavors you just wouldn't think would mix, like teriyaki sauce and sour apple. What the fuck? And it's like,
Right.
trust me, they're so radically different that because they're so different, it works, kind of thing. And Goodfellas for sure. I laugh my fucking ass off at parts of this movie. You know, like especially at Joe Pesci. You know, I just love little things that he
Dude.
mutters, like when she hands him the dog, he goes, "I fucking eat this dog." You know, like the little weird thing, like one dog looks one way, the other looks the other way. You know? And it's like random shit that he says. It's hilarious. It's so funny.
Hold up, you fucking varmint, you.
Right, yeah. He's like, let's take
Where's
the
the
loot and
strong
go
box?"
back to the hideout. And he's shooting the
Right.
gun through the paper bag. It's like, what the fuck?
One thing I wanted to, so one thing I want to touch on. You mentioned very astutely that yeah, that like it does lull you into a false sense of security. That is something that I was watching this documentary. Irvin Winkler, the producer of this movie, was talking about. He's like, yeah, like the first half of this movie is like, you know, this is, we're going to honey trap you, right? Like we're going to show you everything, honeypot you, sorry. We're going to honeypot you into like, you know, loving everything, and like just being on this like journey with these guys and the glitz and glamour. And Irvin Winkler identified the scene where it turns. And it's crazy that when you and I was splitting this movie up to talk about, so, you know, I said to you, oh, the halfway point is where Spider gets shot, right? That is where this movie turns. That is
Right.
when you realize that these guys are not good fucking people, man.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, although in the book at that point, they do, like, Henry does recognize that Jimmy and Tommy were murderers. Like they like killing for them was very, very easy.
Sure.
But like it's not until that spider moment in this movie that you're like, oh my god, like this is not
Yeah.
what this is.
It's like the sacrificial lamb, you know.
Mm.
It's the it's the action that brings down the storm.
Yeah.
Oh, it hasn't rained in 2 months. Well, let's sacrifice a virgin and see, you know.
Right.
And it's not some. I think the only other way that you make that death even more impactful, if it's some old guy, you know, if it's some like older guy, like it can't be some dude in his 30s or 40s, because then it's like, he's just, but it's such a young guy that it really, it burns, you know, when it happens. It's like, God damn, man.
But it's okay because Christopher Moltisanti will get his revenge in a bakery a couple of years later, so it's fine.
Yeah, him and Frank Vincent. Yeah,
right. Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Let's get into this. There was a lot of preamble in this episode. I mean, rightly so. But what do you say we get into this bitch?
Let's do it.
So we start off with this prologue, right? This sort of like cold open. This car traveling along this dark road, New York, 1970. We met our boys, right? Jimmy Conway, Tommy DeVito, and Henry. So Tommy DeSimone is the guy's real name. Was the guy's real name, and Jimmy Burke was the guy's real name. So Conway was his mother's maiden name, and I guess, I don't know, they sort of like changed it for the movie. I don't know why they changed Tommy's name, but Tommy is an interesting character because he is nowhere near as big of a character in the book as he is in this film. The, you know, the whole thing of like, you know, what, I amuse you, like, you know, funny how, like that whole thing was like that's for the movie. Although that does tie into like the bigger picture, which I'll talk about. But like, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. That they kind of like extended Tommy's scenes to kind of like create this trio of like, I don't want to say protagonists, anti-heroes, you know?
No, yeah. I mean, protagonist doesn't mean morally good or bad, I guess. It's just main character, you know. I don't know. But yeah, well, that and also the physical size difference of like, yeah, like Tommy DeSimone was like my size. Like he was like
Mm,
6'3", like 200, 300 pounds. He was a kind of a big guy. And it's
right.
crazy to like imagine with that guy's temper, how fucking mad he would be if he was still alive and Joe
Dude.
Pesci played him.
What the fuck is that? They think they got a flat tire, they pull over, and you know what I love, man? When they pull over and it's this, they're all looking at the closed trunk and this foreboding zoom, like as we, on the closed trunk. And man, what a fucking opening this is. The red lights, it's like they're in hell. Um, but like
Yeah.
what I love about this is like we literally open the movie on the moment that causes these guys downfall, right? Like this is the reason of Tommy's death,
Right.
which kind of like creates a little bit of a domino effect on Jimmy. Obviously, like the Lufthansa heist is like the big, you know, for everyone the turning point,
Hmm.
because that creates this whole domino effect. But like, I think this is emotionally, I think this is the big for these three guys, the big moment, because Henry here is like, we've gone a bit too far. You can see it in his
Right.
face when it happens.
I, I,
But
f-
anyway,
I
talk
f-
to me about this opening.
well, I feel like I will disagree with you only in the slightest that I feel like the moment with Spider is when like the peak goes back down,
Hmm.
but I
Hmm.
feel like this is as pretty much as violent as the movie gets. I feel like
Sure.
like this, and the thing is, like by today's standards, this movie is like not all that violent,
No,
which is
no.
the crazy part. But the fact that violence is so, like when they shoot Stax Edwards off screen, all the bodies are found from the Lufthansa thing. Like they're found. We don't see the
Hmm.
murders. There's really not a whole lot. Like, I mean, yeah, Maury gets an ice pick to the back of the head. And you see some people get beat up, but you don't really see a lot of like people getting thrown off of buildings or The Departed is more violent. I feel like, like I feel like that scene, people get shot like point blank in the head, and there are moments of that in this, but I feel like this moment specifically, the violence is just so over the top. Of like when the trunk opens, you're not expecting it to be a guy already beat up. You're
Hmm.
just when you open it up, and that guy looks like he's just had his head smashed in with a fucking bat. You're like, oh my fuck, that like when it.
The sound design of the knife going into his
No,
body is
Tommy,
incredible.
Tommy, don't.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, and the thing is, he looks so bad that you don't really know when he pops back up in the movie. Like you don't know, that it's Frank Vincent again, and it's just such an insane threshold of the violence, and I think that's the moment where it's like, okay, like all gloves are off, like your head is on this could be you as well. Like it's a mirror image. You need to realize that this could just as easily be you in that trunk.
Definitely. That's a really good point. I would argue there's nothing in this movie that's more violent than the way Joe Pesci dies in Casino with the baseball bats. The
Oh
sound of
yeah.
the bats clink 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 against the fucking
Oh.
against his body, dude. Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Um yeah, incredibly violent. Tommy just starts stabbing into him and Jimmy shoots him in the trunk. And then we start with the voiceover, right? Well, we're still in the moment, by the way, which I love. Like as he's closing the trunk, we get this really quick look on Henry's face, which is like a little bit of like regret. He's like, I regret being here. We shouldn't be here. Like, why did
Mm-hmm.
we kill this mad guy? Um, you know, it's kind of like undercut by this very positive flashback. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. Obviously, the line of the movie, right? Brooklyn 1955, we get a wide-eyed Henry looking out of his window. He's wanting to be a somebody. He's admiring the guys who ran the cab stand. We get these lots of montages here, shots of these well-dressed men wearing three-piece suits, jewelries, nice cars. Nice little shot of like Tony Sirico, not as Paulie Walnuts. You know, we meet Tootie Cicero.
You
Real la-
started it. I
right,
love that.
right. Last name is Vario, Tootie Vario. He ran the cab stand for Paulie, who was the boss of everyone in the neighborhood. He didn't move. He didn't have to move for anybody.
Mhm.
I love like when those guys are just like outside that store, and without saying a word, Paulie just makes his presence known, because everyone just immediately like quits talking and quits joking around. And it's just like, Paulie, hello. And they just like pay him respect, just like him like being there. What's interesting that I wanted to bring up is it's very interesting watching The Sopranos and watching Goodfellas because Paulie is a captain. He's not a boss. He's not like Carmine Lipitazzi or Tony Soprano. He is of the stature of Paulie Walnuts or even Moltisanti at some points. He's kind of like on that level. So when you watch Goodfellas and you're like, oh no, he's only a captain, but he's pretty high up and they respect him a lot. Only a captain is a big deal. Like that is huge.
Right.
I think Sopranos twist that a little bit.
Yeah.
In the way
what is higher, a general or a colonel? I think a colonel, right?
General.
Or is it general? Yeah. It's like, I mean, you might not be the general, but at least you're a colonel, kind of thing. Yeah.
I love that you need to seek clarity before you use your
Yeah. I knew I had one of those right, and I was like, fuck, I can't remember. But yeah, the beginning of this, for one thing, I love this trunk shot, but it always makes me now also think of Joyride when they open up the trunk and pull the CB radio out, and I think it's paying homage a little bit to Goodfellas, but I love that trunk shot.
Joyride, huh? Yeah.
Oh, I love Joyride. I bought that. I still watch it every few. A great movie. Probably the best surprise pick you ever hit me with was Joyride, where I was like, I love this movie. Like it's so good.
Incredible.
Yeah, very good. It's one of those movies I wish we could cover again. For like the first time watching it, I was like, oh my god. Anyways,
did we do that on this feed or was that a bonus? I can't remember.
No, I think it was this feed. I think it was.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, the shit, what you were just saying about Paulie, I love that the actor Paul Sorvino, who R.I.P. He was talking about didn't really know if he had it in him to play this part. And he's like, and I just kind of sat there and stared in the mirror at myself and was like, okay, yeah, I can do it.
Yeah, so good.
Did you hear the story that Henry Hill talks about the real Paul Vario? Like, because in this, he never lays a hand on anybody except for smacking Henry in the face. That's it. You never see him do anything violent. But Henry Hill has this little story where he's like, yeah, I was a teenager or something riding around with him. And he parks the car, goes into this bar, and I can see through the window. And he walks up to this barmaid and pulls out a baseball bat and breaks her fucking collarbone and just starts beating the shit out of her with a bat in front of everybody. Because she had told his wife that he was having an affair with her, the barmaid. And just went in there and fucking, and Henry Hill's like, yeah, he fucking broke her collarbone. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. Like fucking
That's
laughing
wild,
at that. But the real Paulie, the real Paulie was a monster. He was extremely violent.
Yeah, it's interesting because like when the book talks about Paul Vario, it talks about him in like he's this very careful guy. He doesn't talk directly to people. He doesn't like conferences. Obviously, as Goodfellas highlights, and he gets a lot of people to do the violence for him. When he goes to jail, it's usually on like fraud or racketeering charges. It's never like a violent thing. But yeah, like that's a really good point. So we meet Henry's family. Now, in reality, Henry actually did have 7 other siblings living in that little house. And one of his brothers was born with a spinal issue, as we saw. The guy's in a wheelchair. His father was Irish and his mother was Italian, which is incredibly important because obviously his mother is from the same part of Sicily as Paulie. So like there was a lot of that like connection there. Now, the reason why Henry can never be a made man is because he was Irish. His father's Irish.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way to trace him. Yeah, there's no way to trace him back to the old country. And I think that's really, really interesting because Henry he's not a boss. He never even becomes a made guy.
Right.
Like, I think
he's an associate, technically.
Right, exactly. When people talk about Goodfellas, they're like, oh, it's that mafia movie. And it absolutely is, but your lead character is not a mafioso, which is wild.
It's that line between, like, a normal person couldn't touch him, but another made guy absolutely could.
Definitely. And just kind of like skipping ahead here, when the cops actually arrest Henry, and I'll get into like how they did that and all that, but like when the cops arrest Henry and he flips on them, it was a huge thing for the DA. His name was McDonald. When DA McDonald was talking about Henry, this was a big thing because you never really got guys who are higher up, and Henry's like position in terms of like he had access to everyone at every
Right.
level. He had access to street level guys. He had access to like people higher than that. He had access to captains, and he had access to bosses, and that made Henry just the best person to roll on these guys.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like a Robert Duvall and the guy Tom. I can't remember his name.
Yeah. Why am I forgetting his name? He's a consigliere. Yeah.
Consigliere. Yeah. It's almost like so just a more hands-on version of like somebody outside the family.
Hagen.
Tom Hagen.
Tom Hagen.
Yeah. I love it. He's one of the best parts of those movies.
He's my favorite, man. He's so good.
Mm-hmm.
He's so level-headed.
Absolutely.
But yeah, here we go. So, Henry would skip school. He says, I knew everybody and everybody knew me. He parked Cadillacs. I love the excitement to park Cadillacs, even though he couldn't see over the steering wheel. I couldn't even see over the steering wheel.
Yeah.
The shot of the young girls like admiring him from behind the chain link fence. Henry watches on and observes that even the cops were on the take, right? Taking alcohol or cigarettes to leave the guys to operate.
He made them partners.
Right, exactly. This whole narration, like narration doesn't work for a lot of people. I've never minded narration.
No.
But I think this might be one of the best uses of narration. Like, I mean,
yeah.
It's so it adds so much to what's going on visually.
That, and it's so the narration is so good that when it changes from Henry to Karen briefly, like there's literally you're not even bothered by it.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, I guess she's talking now, whatever,
right, exactly. And the book does that too. The book has in capital letters Henry, and then colon, and then like Henry, whatever Henry says, and then it says Karen colon, and then it's whatever Karen says. It's it's good. It's good stuff, man. So I was part of something. I was a part of something. I belonged. I was treated like a grown up, right? Like, and that is what is so attractive to Henry at this time in his life, right?
Right.
Like, his home is, I'm not going to say broken, but you have 7 kids here, man, and you have this kid who wants to be a part of something, and look how attractive this looks, He learned to earn, and Henry getting beaten by his dad, like, man, like, you haven't been to school in months. In months! You want to grow up to be a bum! Like, this is, man, like, you can't pull this kind of stuff off in films anymore, like the beating with the belt, By the way, I copped that when I was young, beating with the belt. Did you?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not with a belt, with
that's
various
Fiji justice, baby.
with various wooden instruments, but never a belt.
I've broken my fair share of wooden spoons back in the day, man. Trust me.
Yeah, I got so annoyed because by the time I was in 4th or 5th grade, I was like a foot taller than my dad. So I just started taking them and putting them up places high. Like, I was like 6'3", he's like 5'8". I would just go and put him on top of the cupboard or something. You wouldn't find him anymore.
Oh no, man! My brother and I, we got the belts, the beltings. Sometimes we got chili in the gums.
What? What is that? What did you grow up? Guantanamo? What is that? Chili in the gums?
The old saying, "Wash your mouth out with soap."
Yeah, I have had my mouth washed out with soap.
This is that version, man. This is Fiji justice. I love my
wow. I have a protective order against them right now. A fucking chili. So I mean, is it spicy? Is it just like cinnamon?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's just a lot of like
burn, man. It burns.
Wow.
Like chili, like actual chilies, like a red chili.
Like not like powdered shit.
No, not powdered shit. Like actual chili getting grinded up in there, and yeah, it was rough. It was if
What the
we got it out of
fuck?
line.
This
Oh
is
yeah,
one of
dude.
those moments when you have to sit there and be like, "Oh yeah, I didn't really have a normal childhood."
Yeah. No, it was a discipline thing, man. Like, yeah, Dad made us. Yeah, it was wild. I'm now
Jesus Christ.
I'm now realizing how fucked up that was.
Yeah, that's
you couldn't,
super fucked
you
up,
couldn't,
dude.
you couldn't really get away. You cannot get away with that now. Man.
No,
Like, it's
no,
fucking.
no.
It was
Holy
a different
shit.
time, man. It was a different time. You know.
Yeah. hmm
Um. But anyway, let's move on. Where are we? So Henry assesses his dad. This is interesting. Henry assesses his dad being mad as because he's jealous because he's broke, right?
Yeah.
Because he's got 7 kids to look after and one of them's in a wheelchair. The way
Which I
I
think
saw
was
it,
part of it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. He said the way I saw it, everyone had to take a beating sometime. That is one of my favorite lines.
Great quote.
Absolutely,
Gotta break eggs and make omelets,
100%. Um, the guys identify the postman delivering truancy letters to Henry's house, and they threatened him, right? If another letter from that school goes to that kid's house, in the oven, your fucking head's gonna go.
Poor guy.
This poor guy, dude.
I'm just saying, could you not have politely, I would have walked up to him, unbutton your jacket, show him the gun, and be like, just do me a favor. And be like, okay, well, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, right. But I wanted to talk about a little bit just how much these guys were sort of like looking after this community and this neighborhood. Um, everyone knew everyone. Everyone, like, these guys had eyes everywhere. Like, it got to the point where, like, if there was a stranger walking through this neighborhood, they knew who that, like, they would identify that stranger, and like they'd be like, all right, we gotta keep tabs on this guy, right? There was this
Mhm.
example in the book where this woman who lives in this neighborhood is walking like along. It's nighttime, and this black guy who's never been seen in the neighborhood before, starts to follow her, and obviously he starts to he follows her inside her house.
Mm.
And then Henry describes as soon as, like, by the time I got there, like 30 seconds later, the hallway was full of just fucking Italians just like beating up on this guy, man.
Wow.
Like, just wild. Thelma Schoonmaker was talking about, like, if there was a hit, the mothers knew to call their kids inside,
Yeah.
and yeah, they would they'd let them out once the hit was done, once everything was cleaned up. Like,
Yeah.
what a wild, like, it's the Wild West, you know?
I think that was Marty's mom, Scorsese's mom. No, Shoemaker tells the story, but she was saying that, yeah, when he was a kid, his mom would get calls and say, hey, don't let him play it outside no more till after 4 o'clock. Okay,
So
cool.
crazy.
And then after 4, they'd go in. It's like, I would go out. It's like, what the fuck?
So crazy. So yeah, that whole thing with the postman is completely true. That definitely happened. Verified in the book. Paulie hated phones. He used to have an intermediary to take care of Paulie's phone calls. Paulie didn't like talking to people. He only spoke to the top guys. He didn't like conferences, right? Paulie got a piece of everything they made. It was a tribute, like the old days. All they got from Paulie was protection from guys looking to rip them off. They're like the police department for wise guys.
Mm-hmm. Which at first it makes kind of sense. And you're like, oh, okay. And then you're like, no, it's not. I think you're simplifying a little bit of what's really going on.
Definitely. Because these guys need to pay Paulie now for protection, right? And the money needs, as we'll find out later, fuck you, pay me, right? Like,
right,
money
it's
needs
not
to be there
charity.
on time.
Definitely,
it's not charity. And we see Henry's crimes are sort of like escalating, right? He's blowing up these cars. Now, this is explained in the book. Essentially, what had happened is a guy had set up a rival cab stand, and he was sort of like undercutting Tutti Vario's cab stand on like the price. And Tutti like goes to speak to this guy, and this guy's not budging, right? He's like, no, I'm allowed to run my cab stand, whatever. But he's taking money away from Tutti, right? So Tutti had Henry blow up this guy's entire cab stand fleet.
Jesus Christ.
Just blow it up. Uh,
I always wondered what that was at the beginning, him blowing all the cars up.
Yeah. But this explosion is gorgeous, by the way, as we kind of like freeze frame on Henry running away. That is a shot that's burned in my mind, is like this freeze frame.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Kid's carried his mother's groceries all the way home out of respect. I love it. He shows up one day back at home with the clothes. My God, you look like a gangster. This guy getting shot and Henry wasting 8 fucking aprons on this guy. Henry describes this moment as the first time that he'd seen a guy shot as well. So this was the first time that he'd seen that kind of sort of like violence.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't think it was Tutti Cicero or Tutti Vario who said 8 fucking aprons on this guy. But yeah, that did happen as well. like getting fucking mad for wasting aprons.
Remember a guy getting like, oh, they hit the artery. He's like, close the door.
Right, exactly. We get this beautiful panning shot of people just kind of like gambling, right? He describes the moment that he first met Jimmy Conway. He said he was a legend. He'd give the doorman 100 just for opening the door. The bartender got money for keeping the ice cubes cold. Now, again, as I said, in the movie, his last name is Conway. But, that's his mother's maiden name. But in reality, his name was Jimmy Burke. And this guy, Jimmy Burke, was fucking wild, man. Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
This guy was insane. So he had become a legend for mostly sort of like hijacking trucks. He loved, as we find out later, he loved to steal. And that is 100% true, man. This guy was addicted to stealing. He was addicted to murdering. He had gone to jail at the age of 11. And in jail, mob bosses or like made men would get this guy to hit people in jail. And that's how his association with the mafia kind of came about. That's why you have this lone Irishman hanging around, which is wild, man.
Yeah, another situation can't be made like Henry,
Mm. You might know who we are, but we know who you are. You understand? Shrimp and lobsters were the best. They went very fast. Jimmy introduces Henry to Tommy. How you doing, Henry?
How you doing, Henry? That kid does a great impression of Joe Pesci.
Right? And I also feel like that the kid that plays Henry is pretty kind of like...
Yeah, he's got some quirkiness to him that I really like. He's got some very natural kind of I don't know. He seems like he's coming off pretty effortlessly.
Yeah. So this didn't really happen like this. In fact, like Tommy DeSimone just sort of like kind of shows up. He's not really like introduced to Henry like this. But yeah, like I said, man, he's very different in the book. He's somewhat of a background character. He does have like big sort of like moments, obviously with the Billy Bats thing and stuff like that. And also at this point, Henry had started stealing cars as well. He had recruited kids from the neighborhood to steal them, park them in a lot, and then send them down to the dock. He would go down to the Bahamas or something, and like wherever they fucking sold the cars and collect them payments. Henry takes his first pinch for trying to sell cigarettes to the cops, right? And Tommy manages to escape and alerts Tootie. What I think is interesting, actually, that I want to touch on is it's not in the movie, and I think it's kind of important, is that Henry actually joined the army. He spent 2 years in the army. Mm-hmm. He went into the paratroopers when he turned 17, which was good timing because there was a lot of eyes on organized crime in 1960. J. Edgar Hoover, who was the director of the FBI back then, he just announced that organized crime, get this, was costing the public over $22 billion a year. And he had actually denied the existence of the mafia for 25 years before that. Like he's
sounds about right.
Right, exactly. Cross-dressing motherfucker. I'm kidding. If you're a cross-dresser, don't worry about it. That's not my values.
No, we're talking about J. Edgar Hoover, right?
Yeah.
Nah, fuck him. No.
And yeah, while in the army, dude, like Henry actually made so much money selling surplus food that the army had ordered. Like he just kind of like like,
God, even
they
a
bought so
hustler.
much food, dude, and like, yeah, he would like sell them out the back door. Like, it's so crazy, man. Exactly, the hustle is real.
Hmm.
Talk about entrepreneur, right? What an inspiration.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with violence and intimidation.
Right, exactly. Jimmy congratulates Henry on taking his first pinch like a man, and he learned the two greatest things in life: never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut. Right? Really, really interesting. I love as I open this door. Oh, you broke your cherry.
Yeah, I love that part. Such a good, and the kid's giving them all like the finger guns and stuff, and
So
like
good,
pointing
man.
at him. Like
It's so
again,
good.
the honey trap. You know.
Right, right. And we get another freeze frame here, another needle drop. Dude, the amount of needle drops in this movie is insane. Like, one thing that I wanted to mention, actually, I was going to mention this during Carlos's, when you were reading Carlos's comment about Martin Scorsese's best film. Um, I think this is his best film. My favorite, my personal favorite, is Wolf of Wall Street, but
Hmm.
they're basically the same movie. These, like, Wolf of Wall Street and Goodfellas is essentially the same movie, um, except like, two different sort of crime organizations. You even have the lead character sort of like flipping on his friends and all of that stuff, and going into protective custody and all that stuff. Like, like, in my opinion, it's the same movie. They even have like these massive montages and music constantly playing. Yeah. That's just my thing. But anyway,
Sure.
Idlewild Airport, 1963. We meet a grown up Henry and Tommy, right? Enter, uh, enter fucking Ray Liotta and Joe Pesci.
Hmm.
There was 30 billion a year moving through the airport, and they tried to steal every bit of it, right? They had truckers in on the schemes. Literally, this guy who just leaves the keys in the truck as he just goes to get something to eat. Right? Couple of a couple of N-words just stole my truck.
Yeah. I got to be honest. Is this guy making this up, or does he actually just assume that that's what happened? Like, does he walk out and go like, "Oh, don't steal my truck," wink, or does he go in there and really get his truck stolen? I could never
No,
really
it's
figure
the
that out.
first one. It's the first one. It has to be, man. Like,
Okay.
um,
I thought it was almost like funny that like he gets his truck stolen and immediately
black
assumes it's
guys.
two black guys. Like what the fuck, man?
um. Okay. Yeah, one of my other favorite quotes. Whenever we needed money, we'd rob the airport. To us, it was better than Citibank.
Yeah.
We meet the Bamboo Lounge, right? We kind of like go through all these characters. There's Jimmy and Tommy and me. There's Anthony Stabile, Frankie Carbone, Mo Black's brother Fat Andy, Frankie the Wop, Freddie No Nose, Pete the Killer, who was Sally Bowles' brother,
Hey, I took
Nicky
care of that
Eyes.
thing for you.
Yeah, dude, I love the little inserts of like little dialogue.
So ominous.
Mikey Francesi, and of course Jimmy two times.
I'm gonna get the papers. Get the papers. Mikey Francesi, what's crazy is he has that whole career now. He was a mobster, and now he has this huge YouTube career where it's like Mafia Movie Monday, and he talks
I didn't know
about
that.
like, yeah, he said he like at the time because he had been out of the mob for a little while, and he was trying to get his act together, and his wife was like, thought that he was this big time criminal, and he's like, no, it really wasn't like that, blah blah. Cut to about a week later, and we're seeing Goodfellas, and it cuts to that guy. He goes, Mikey Francesi, and his wife just looked over at him. He's like, I swear to fucking God. And he's like, apparently Mikey Francesi, it's like, I don't really know why he put me in there. I was not a prominent like person. I don't know. I think he just liked the way his name sounded or something. I can't remember what. Like he was definitely there, but not to like, there's probably 4 or 5 people more that realistically they could have put in, that were closer to the story.
That that name never shows up in the book, so I don't. That must have been a script thing. But Frankie the Wop. Tell me, Frankie the Wop.
Oh shit. I mean, now I gotta look it up in the movie.
I'm not gonna let you sweat too much, but that's Carmine Lupatazzi, baby. That's
yeah. Sorry,
that's the boss from New York. You know,
There's so many different people that fly through this movie that Beansy is in this, and I forgot
Right.
about it. And I was like, oh fuck, dude.
Beansy Gator. Yeah. By the way, the guy that plays Carmine Lupitazzi or Frankie the Wop in this movie, his real name is Tony Lip. He actually was a gangster. He was actually
Wait,
pretty
who is
high
that?
up. His name's Tony Lip.
Is he in this movie?
Yeah, he plays Frankie the Wop. Wait, just literally for that 1 second, like as he kind of like says hi.
Gotcha.
But yeah, he's in The Sopranos. He plays Carmine. But yeah, Tony Lip. They made a movie about him. It won Best Picture called Green Book a couple years back. Played by Viggo Mortensen of all people. So yeah,
Wow.
But yeah, what I love about this scene, dude, as we're kind of like going through all these different characters, is that this feels like a living, breathing ecosystem. You know, like this feels like everyone interacts with the other. Everyone understands each other. You know, like there's just such a understanding between all of these people as to what's going on. It's fantastic. Henry says to live any other way was nuts. The people who took the subway to work every day were suckers. They had no balls. This is what I feel like Scorsese has something against people who take the subway to work, because that same quote is in Wolf of Wall Street. Like when so Leo's talking to one of the cops, one of the FBI agents, and he's like, "You go home, you sweat, you sit on the sweaty fucking subway, you're sweating your balls off." And I'm just like, oh man, like Marty, what you used to take the subway to work, and now you're just going in limos, huh? I get it. If we wanted something, we just took it, right? And then while we're at the Bamboo Lounge, we're with this scene with Frenchie, right? Who's this guy from the airport. Frenchie, by the way, the insurance salesman from The Office. But that's
oh yeah, I know him as a mental from Dumb and Dumber.
There you go. Doesn't he show up in Seinfeld? Is it Seinfeld?
Probably. He acted in the 90s, so there's a good chance.
Yeah, there you go. He says that they shouldn't worry about the alarms, right? Just have to worry about the key. Now, in reality, they actually had to, for this Air France job, they had to steal the key from a guard who couldn't be bribed. Like, this guy just...
Yes, his story is crazy, yeah.
Dude, he was such a... I remember this quote from The Town, that Ben Affleck movie. Like, you know, this guy tucks his fucking pants into his shoes. Like, that kind of, like, he's that kind of guy. And what happened is, like, they had to, like, coax him into doing it. And Frenchie was the one who came up with the idea of, like, man, maybe we get him a hooker. Like, I know he's lonely, whatever. Like, so they had this hooker who kind of, like, like, went out with him a couple times, and they went in, like, they timed it. So they broke into his place, stole the key while he's out with this hooker that they set up. And, it was crazy, man. Like, just the, like, little... small like tidbits like that, man. Oh, love it. But yeah, essentially this is the Air France robbery, which happened in April 1967. They got away with $420,000 in that time, which is about $3 million today.
Damn.
And basically what's happening here is that the money comes from overseas where it had been exchanged for that country's currency. And yeah, like while the security guard was on his meal break, I got this from Wikipedia. While the security guard was on his meal break, like, it doesn't like implicate Frenchie and like, oh yeah, maybe he was on his meal break on purpose. The mobsters walked into the terminal pretending to retrieve lost baggage. The mobsters used a duplicate key to unlock the door, and they unloaded 7 bags of money into their empty suitcases. No alarms were raised, no shots were fired, and nobody was injured. And the theft was not discovered until the next day when a Wells Fargo truck arrived to pick up the money. The monsters. The monsters. Fucking Godzilla and Mothra walk up in there.
Yeah.
The mobsters gave $120,000 to the Colombo crime family because they owned part of the airport. So this is kind of like a... what is it? The Esplanade kind of situation from The Sopranos, right? Like, you need to give a little bit of money over. So as the theft occurred in the territory, and they gave $60,000 to their boss Paul Vario as tribute, leaving them with 240,000 or 1,750,000. Sorry, 1,750,000 in 2016 money. Wow, man, huge score. Like whatever.
Yeah.
But I love this as like Frenchie's laying it out. He's like, oh, it's beautiful, $500,000 all
Yeah.
cash, security. You're looking at it. I'm a commandant. Like he's
Yeah.
so excited.
To the point where Jimmy's like, shut the fuck up. Shut the
Right.
fuck up.
Like, I love, but I love that that's all it takes for it to be a go. Like the green light. Like Jimmy's just like, yeah, we're on. That's it. We're on. Let's go. Just nods. Then we get the funny house scene, right? The one of the most well-known scenes in this entire film, the funny house scene. Again, not described in the book, but something that was written into the movie. I remember when I first watched this movie as a teen, I had an issue with like kind of like Henry's laugh. It's so over the top.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
But as it sat with me, right, I figure that like Henry's kind of like he might actually be putting this on a little bit. Like he's trying to appease Tommy here because if nobody laughs at Tommy's joke, he would know that Tommy becomes volatile, right? Tommy is this loose cannon. So if I'm not laughing and if I'm not laughing over the top in a over the top manner, then things are gonna happen. So that I just thought that was really interesting. But yeah, man, like I'm gonna take a break. You talk about this scene. Like talk about this funny house scene.
Yeah, from what I understand, it was largely improvised by Joe Pesci. I guess this is that I don't. There's reports that it happened to him. There's reports that he saw it happen. I think pretty much the story is that he saw it happen to in Chicago with a couple of like Chicago mobsters, and I think obviously seeing something like that, like any good actor, it's like I'm going to use that. Like I'm going to definitely put that to use. And you can see, it's largely, I think the whole thing is basically improv between Liotta and Pesci. And you can kind of see the actors in the background going like, and they're looking like side to side, but it only adds to that is the confusion that you want for this bit to work. And it absolutely like it works, but God, at the first time seeing it, you're just like, what is going on, man? Like you really have no idea. Like this could break good or this could break bad.
Man, it is. He lets this go on for so long, like Tommy does. What, I amuse you? What, am I a clown? I exist to amuse you. And Hill is sweating, right? And you kind of wonder, man, like if Henry hadn't said, "Get the fuck out of here," how long would Tommy have kept this going?
Right.
You stuttering prick, yeah. 7 fucking G's you owe me. This manager, by the way, very brave guy, walks over because the busboy is too afraid to approach approach Tommy for the 7 G's. And as this manager's talking to Tommy, like to try and settle up, I love this really quick shot of Henry here, and you just know that he knows what's coming. Like, like he's like, oh, fuck. Like, here we go. And, of course, Tommy breaks a bottle over the guy's head, and he starts going in on the busboy. Like, Pesci is just riffing here. He's just going for it, And the way this scene ends is absolutely hilarious. Like, Tommy just like leaps on Henry, and then we just cut away. It feels like the most Looney Tunes thing I've ever seen. Hard cut to the manager of the Bamboo Lounge going directly to the brass, Paulie, right? He says, "I gotta go on the lam for this guy. Come on, Tommy all his life. This cocksucker's an arch criminal." And this wasn't covered in the book like this. Like I said, Tommy wasn't involved, but Paulie was asked to go in on the Bamboo Lounge. Essentially, this guy got Paulie's protection, but now he's got to come up with Paulie's money every week. No matter how good or bad the business is, fuck you, pay me, right? What they did was they ran up credit, and then they eventually burned it all down for insurance. They bought all this shit, they essentially what they did to fucking what's the goddamn's name? The
Oh,
T-1000's name from fucking Sopranos.
fuck.
You know who I'm talking about, right? Like, essentially,
Yeah,
for anyone who's listening who hasn't seen The Sopranos, what happens
it's a
is,
bust out.
right, this guy owns a merchandise goods store, sorry, a sporting goods store, and he goes to play cards one night. He borrows so much money from Tony Soprano, and he can't pay him back. He's like, oh, yeah, the business isn't so good. So what they do is they run up all this credit on him, like, like they buy all these, like, plane tickets, whatever, and they essentially bankrupt the guy.
Davey Scatino.
Davey, there we go.
You're doing a good job, Davey.
The poor kid's car, dude.
Yeah. Holy shit.
But yeah, dude, what am I supposed to do? Shoot him? Wouldn't be a bad idea. Holy
Man.
fuck.
Such a good stare, like just looking down both barrels of death, and Albert Barisi from The Sopranos as well.
There you go.
Definitely one of the most iconic parts of this movie, were just that cold stare, and it's like, holy fuck,
terrifying. I love them rigging the place to burn. They're out in the car discussing these women. I've been trying to bang this broad for a month.
Yeah. Who knows? She might have a lot of money, be a really big fucking score.
Bang this broad is it's my favorite. I'm trying to bang this broad. Turns out she doesn't want to go out with Italians alone. A Jew broad, can you believe?
Yeah. Prejudice against Italians.
Right. She wants a double date. Now this actually happened, but it wasn't Tommy who went on the double date. It was Paulie's son. I think his name was Petey. So Petey was the one who asked Henry to come along on this double date. And we get Lorraine Bracco, right? Bracco? Lorraine Bracco.
Bracco. Yeah.
Jennifer Melfi herself. And, the narrator change it's jarring and unexpected, but it happens in the book, and it feels so like, oh, of course that's what's happening now. Like, it's normal.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer Melfi, more like Jennifer Milfy. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there are a couple moments when Tony's dreaming about her, dude. I'm like,
yeah. For me, the part that always gets me in this movie is in the second half, after everything's going downhill, and she's like in like a black like tracksuit, but I don't think she has any makeup on or anything, and her hair's wet, and I was like, all right, 1999 or like whatever age I was that saw this, definitely remembered that very well. Or I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, she's a good looking broad. She's complaining about how he was rushing her out, right? But she agreed to go out with him again. Henry stands her up, and when she's sitting there alone, and the zoom out to Tommy just sitting there with the food, like the mouthful of food. Well, I don't know where he is.
Yeah, but very worried about him. Didn't like him.
But she made Tommy go looking for him, right? You got some nerve standing me up. Who do you think you are, Frankie Valli? Calls him a liar, and of course this excites Henry. In the book, Henry describes this as, quote, "It was like a hit. She's really steamed. By the time she finished screaming, we made a date. This time I went."
Yeah, I love it. He's like, she had great eyes like Liz Taylor. And it's like, I love the confidence to walk up in front of all these like mafiosos and run up on the corner and make them move. It's like, holy shit, that takes a lot of oomph.
There is a point where I want to talk about women in this movie, and like how these guys kind of treated women. We'll talk about it a bit later, because I think there is a more natural point where we can chat about it. But yeah, like that is definitely interesting. And then of course we get the famous Copacabana one take shot, right? Like one of the most incredible achievements of Martin Scorsese's career. Mm-hmm. This really feels like Henry sort of like bringing her into the belly of the beast, like they head down into the basement, down into the depths of this thing. But it also feels like Henry going further and further into the mob. Like, he's kind of like leaving that old, like, the normal life behind, and he's going into this glitz and glamour and everything that
Mm-hmm.
comes with it. And uh, yeah, apparently it turns out that the production crew couldn't get permission to go in the short way, like through the front door, and it forced them to kind of go around the back. And it was then that Scorsese decided to make this a long, unbroken shot to better symbolize that transition in his life. Of course, shooting a scene like that with that length and going through all those turns wasn't easy. It was filmed 8 times. The Copacabana nightclub was a real place. It was associated with the mob as its official owner's partner. Get this, was mob boss Frank Costello.
Wow.
Yeah. Frank Costello, if you don't know, was Jack Nicholson's character in The Departed, or the basis for, rather. Mobster Joe Gallo operated the venue until 1972, and after that it closed and reopened various times before closing for good in May 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Wow.
Of course.
I had no idea.
And Henry, as they're doing this, right, the practicality of this. So Henry is stopping and handing out cash or whatever to these guys so the camera operator can keep up. It's all to do with timing.
Sure. Yeah.
And of course, what do you do? And as if it's been rehearsed, his answer to this is so quick when she asks, "What do you do?" "I'm a union delegate."
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is that?
What is she? He's like, what is she? She's like, I'm in construction.
Yeah.
And she's like, your hands don't feel like you're in construction. I'm a union delegate.
That's so
and
good.
I'm like, well, like I do work construction, and I have the smoothest, softest, like, because I fucking moisturize all the time, and like I do not. You got to take care of your hands, man. You work construction, and I take offense to the stereotype, Lorraine Bracco. You fucking Italian, Jesus Christ.
I cop shit. You have nothing to attack her with, so you're just like,
yeah.
Italian.
I don't appreciate your prejudice, you fucking greasy. No, I'm just like go into like some tirade.
I mean, like this whole movie smells like spaghetti, so it's fine.
Yeah, I love spaghetti.
I can't remember what I was going to say. Fuck. Oh yeah,
what's your spaghetti policy here? No, I'm just kidding.
I cop shit from my blue collar friends all the time for having soft hands.
Hey, there ain't nothing wrong with soft hands. Got to take care of yourself, baby.
Right, exactly.
I'm a big fan of the cocoa butter myself, but that's just me. Take with that information what you will.
Yeah. Anyway, direct quote from the direct quote from the book here from Karen. Right, here we go. "We went to the Copa. The kids I knew went there once, maybe on their prom night. Henry went there all the time. He was known there. He knew everybody. We always sat up close to the stage, and one night, Sammy Davis Jr. sent us champagne. On crowded nights, when people were lined up outside and couldn't get in, the doorman used to let Henry and our party through the kitchen, which was filled with Chinese cooks, and would go upstairs and sit down immediately. There was nothing like it. I didn't think that there was anything strange in all this. A 20-year-old with such connections. I just thought he knew these people. Man, 20. He's doing this at 20.
Well, I tell you, the big thing about cocoa butter is no, I'm just start talking about cocoa butter. No, yeah, that's one of the only parts in this movie that I really go like, okay, is when they go she's like, I didn't think it was weird for a 20-year-old. I was like, he's 20. No, I don't care about the fact that he's like 20 and like he's getting all these perks. Ray Liotta is supposed to be 20 years old, right. And I'm like, he looks like my age. Like he looks like he's like in his mid 30s.
Let me stop you right there. Tommy D. Simone is 20 when he kills Billy Batts.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which is insane.
Well, because you definitely feel like he and like I know Jimmy
is older.
It's just that is right. True. It's just weird to see Jimmy, who like. It's still Robert De Niro, early and young, or young and old, and it's like weird to have like such like children playing these characters, and then now we're like, I don't know. I just like personally, I kind of wish that they like the Irishman. It's like I kind of wish they just kept De Niro as like the older Irishman, and then had a younger actor go back and do that like kind of thing. Like it doesn't bother me, but once that, it does kind of like push the envelope of reality.
That is one of my. I don't have many criticisms against The Irishman, but that is one of my criticisms. Is like this de aging. This is why this movie cost $200 million fucking dollars to make, man. Like Jesus.
Mhm. Right.
So we hard cut to our guys doing the Air France robbery. We did the right thing. We gave Paulie his tribute. Paulie's happy, right? Henry takes Karen away. They meet this guy Bruce that Karen knows. I love like Henry not even like knowing like the little basics of life, like the signing of the check and stuff like that. Like there's no like the education here was basically non-existent because he didn't go to school. He didn't do anything.
Right. He's dyslexic as fuck, apparently.
Yeah.
Henry Hill had a really bad time
Right.
reading in school and just basically got popped in the head for it, which that'll
Definitely.
cure it.
Maury's wigs, right? All of this wig TV ad stuff. This is all real with Maury's wigs. He rubbed Jimmy the wrong way, as we see here, right? As we zoom out and we see like fucking De Niro staring daggers at this goddamn TV commercial.
Mhm.
But man, like Maury says some wild shit here, right? Jimmy's being an unconscionable ball breaker. Jimmy wants his money, right? I didn't agree to 3 points above the Vic. Fuck him. Fuck him in the ear. I could have dropped a dime 1,000,000 times.
Yeah, I think we talked about this on Copland, but this is Ray Liotta and the whole in the bar in front of everybody going in for a penny and for a pound, right? And it's like, shut the fuck up, dude.
Right.
Like don't do that. Like, do not fucking do that.
There's nothing in the book that corroborates this. Maury saying this, like I could have dropped a dime 1,000,000 times. I don't think that he did rat, but yeah, he did hound Jimmy a lot for the money. Like there was a lot of like the come on man, where's the money kind of thing. Dude, Jimmy wrapping the telephone cord around his neck is great. Like
Yeah.
Henry just like bursts into laughter. I'll pay, I promise. Today. And Henry gets a call like while this is happening. And this is one of my favorite kind of like sequences in this entire movie. Is like, just Henry's sort of like assertiveness as he bashes this guy's face in. Now, this is all real. This guy actually did live across the street from Karen. His name was Steve. Basically, what happened is that he had asked her one day if she could help him pick something up. And she agreed and hopped in his Corvette. He was very nice, she says, until they got near the Belmont racetrack, which is three miles away. He pulled the car over, put his arm around her, and she didn't reciprocate. He pushed her, she slapped him twice, and then he pulled the car out and he started driving, and then he slammed on the brakes, right? Like she describes it as, I nearly went through the windshield. And then he opens the door and he shoves her out of the car and he drives away. He leaves it there. And by this time it was nighttime, so she was terrified.
Jesus.
She says, I was afraid to call home. I knew my mother would be upset. And yeah, this is also legit. Like Henry walks over there, except the difference is they weren't on the driveway. They were in his backyard. So from the description in the book as well, the beating was a little more savage than what's in the movie.
Holy fuck.
So this is a quote from Henry. The minute he was in my reach, I grabbed him by the hair with my right hand and pulled his face down nice and low. At the same time, I took the gun out of my left pocket and I started to smack him across the face. I can feel his face go. I shoved the gun inside his mouth and moved it around like a dinner gong. The brothers are so scared and they can't move. I would have shot them if they came towards me. Somebody from inside called the cops, and before the cops arrived, I gave Steve a few more belts. He had pissed all over himself.
Jesus.
Jesus. But yeah, man, this is one of my favorite moments from Ray Liotta in this entire movie. You touch her again, you're done. And his face as he turns around, as he heads back towards Karen, dude, the look on his face is terrifying.
The sneer,
man.
yeah,
The sneer.
the fucking that. There's something very unique about Ray Liotta's kind of like mouth structure, like his upper lip and stuff, and like his teeth. He has a very interesting kind of like jawline and stuff. But just that sneer whenever he's fucking giving somebody the business. Well, and it's like I don't know. I don't know who the Steve cocksucker is, but how stupid are you to like fuck with? I mean, surely you know who this guy is. Like, you know, if you're even a halfway reasonable adult, like surely you know what your next door neighbors are about.
He started, yeah. Karen described it as this guy Steve just started coming around. I've known him most of my life, and yeah, man, like what a weird decision to make. But yeah, man, like like Henry walks over, hide this, right? Hands her the gun, and I love this shot of the gun in her hand, man. Like this is like Scorsese places so much importance on this shot of like the giving over of the gun. This is such a pivotal moment in her life. Like this is because the decision that she makes here fucks her life up completely. Like
Yeah.
absolutely fucks it up. And she says, "I gotta admit, it turned me on." And then hard cut to Mazel Tov, baby, wedding. You hate to see it. You hate to see it.
Oh, a Jewish wedding? Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, as a Muslim.
Yeah. No, yeah, this is kind of this is her Billy Bats moment. You know, this is the in for a penny, in for a pound. Okay, your ticket has been punched, you know.
100%. But at this wedding, right? Like her taking stock is absolutely fantastic. We haven't talked enough about Lorraine Bracco's performance here in this first like part of the movie. She's so bamboozled and she's so amazed. She does the like the kind of like the kid in a candy shop voice really well.
That twirling shot on her as she's like,
dude,
just pie-eyed looking around the room and stuff. Like,
yeah,
oh.
definitely pie-eyed. Yeah, for sure. It was like two families. Everyone was either called Peter or Paul, and their wives were Marie, and they named all their daughters Marie. We pan over some guests. One of them is Tommy's mother, played by Scorsese's own mother, right? Who we'll come to see a little bit later as well. But I kind of wanted to just like stop for a second and focus on something that she's talking about. She's talking to Tommy. She's like, "Why don't you settle down? Look at your friend. He's married. He's got a house, and you're still bouncing around from girl to girl." This is so. This public scolding thing is such an ethnic thing. Like it's such a. I'm not saying that you wouldn't understand, Colin, but it's.
No, yeah, I know what you mean though. The nagging,
the nagging about
when are you going to be a doctor? When are you getting married?
Right.
When are you having kids? It's, yeah, but I do feel like my friends like that is not like I feel like there are like a lot of my white friends that do that, but it's definitely like a multicultural kind of thing for sure.
100%, man. Like this is the amount of times I've heard like my aunties do this shit in front of like fucking kids and. Yeah, yeah, the public embarrassment stuff.
The flogging, yeah.
Right, yeah. The envelopes, right? Here's a little something to help you get started, huh? Like, man.
Oh, and the coming. Line of people when she looks and all of them have like envelopes, like, whew. Well, and
how much you reckon's in there?
Like, man, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much was in the first envelope, but I mean, this is the 70s. I'm gonna guess probably like $1,000. Like I don't know. I don't know what.
I wouldn't say 1,000. I'd say maybe 400 or 500.
You think so? I mean, I don't know. Like look at this wedding. Like I feel like I don't know. Even if it is for $500 or $1,000 an envelope, there's 26 people in line. Yeah. You know, it's like you're either walking out of there with 15 or 26K. It's like that's a fucking lot of lot of money. Yeah. And I love the bag with the money. And he's like, nobody's gonna touch that here. Like that confidence of like nobody's gonna fuck with that. The assurance, Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Except maybe Jimmy. Jimmy loves to steal.
Yeah, I would love Jimmy. They go outside and he puts a pick in the back of Lorraine Bracco's head.
But I love this, man. This is something that Scorsese does so perfectly with this movie, and it's also obviously tied in with Thelma Shoemaker's job as well. Is this jarring transition, right? like literally we have Henry and Karen dancing. It's this very magical moment, and then hard cut to the concerned mother-in-law. Right, he didn't call. Like this whole thing about like her staying
Mm-hmm.
up late to like whatever. And yeah, this happened a lot. Karen said in the book that she was under the belief that her mother was set on breaking them up. She constantly made excuses for him. She said, I wasn't going to let her win. If he stayed out late, I always said he was with the boys. If he didn't call at a certain time, I'd tell my mother he'd called earlier. And this is, I guess, maybe a good time to talk about Karen Hill. So Karen, I think she kind of like gets a little bit of a bad rap in this movie. Not a bad rap, but like she does. I think Scorsese or I don't think they do a good enough job at highlighting how much she really, really, really fought for Henry in
Hmm.
this particular situation. Because when he gets out of jail, when he's in jail, it's reduced to a line when she says, when she's throwing the bread and shit on the table, and she's like, "I'm running to the parole board." Dude, she didn't just write to the parole board. She wrote to the commissioner. She wrote to a senator. Like, she was like on it. Like, because what happened is Henry, when I know we're not there yet, but Henry was sentenced to 10 years, right? He
Mm-hmm.
was handing out sentences like he was handing out candy. Henry served 3 and a bit years, and the reason for that is because they had this policy in the prison where if you were on good behavior, you'd get like 1 day off your sentence or something like that for doing XYZ, right? So you can join the work crew, you'd get a day off for good behavior per month served or whatever. And she was the one who was finding a lot of this information out. She was finding all these loopholes out to get him out
Hmm.
early. She was doing a lot, man. Like I don't want to be critical of this movie because obviously it's fucking Goodfellas, but this is the one part of this movie that I don't really. I think I don't know. I wouldn't say drop the ball, but I wish they'd highlighted a little bit more
Yeah.
on Karen's sort of like contribution to Henry's success.
They're definitely not focusing, which I mean, I get it, 2.5 hours, and like, like you said, it's so dense. Like they summarize like an agonizing, painstaking process for the real Karen Hill in one line in a movie,
Right.
and I get it. Like, she looks disheveled and she's got fucking sausage in her coat and stuff. Like, these are not the glory days anymore. But I love that, how dense the movie is, but it does kind of like skip out on, it would what would it take to show like maybe a couple of minutes of a scene or something,
Mm.
and like kind of show something from Karen's perspective, because they are good at like showing her perspective.
Oh yeah.
Like, we jump over to her narration like flawlessly and stuff. The scene with Jimmy where we think she's going to be killed, like they do a lot of like time with Karen. But I could always use a little bit. I like the ripple effect more so than the impact. Like, okay, we get it. He went to prison, but how does this affect the people around him?
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. But going back to the scene when Henry finally shows up, dude, the mother opens the door and she just goes ape shit. She goes ape shit on Henry,
Oh,
man. She's like, "Why were you? Why didn't you call?" And I love that Henry just doesn't say a word. Right? He just laughs and he goes back to the car and you got fucking Tommy in the car. What kind of people are these?
oh, dude, that has to be one of my favorite parts of this movie. Is that it's like the camera just like turns over to Tommy, like it's on the door, and it's Ray Liotta, and he just starts like.
It's so
and just
good,
starts
man.
walking toward. What's wrong with you, Hendry? You're not normal. Tommy. He's like, shut up.
The mocking, man. The mocking from Tommy. I love it. Karen noticing how run down the wives were, and this is all good stuff, man. Like when she's kind of like looking at these wives, and they're all complaining about like their husbands and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And there's a moment in the book here where she overhears um one of the women saying, "Yeah, her husband went to jail for 3 years," and she says, "My God, 3 years! I thought I could never wait that long." And this story about Jeannie that's told here is true. Her kid was in an argument. The kid got killed. Grandmother has a heart attack because of the kid. Now she has a husband and son in jail, and the mother in a funeral parlor. And man,
Oof.
yeah, talking shit. They were talking about beating their kids with broom handles and leather belts, and I'm like, I just write in my notes here, bruh. Is that it? That's
Yeah,
fucking
no flip flops or bungee cords.
it's fucking child's play, man. You know.
Uh-huh.
Henry assures Karen that nobody's going to jail unless they want to, right? And that's such a it's such a
All those guys in there, Karen, they just hate their wives. They just want to get out.
right. He says that black guys go to jail because they fall asleep in the getaway car.
That's not what he said. So no, I'm just
No,
say
like,
it. Like,
he does say black guys, doesn't he? He doesn't.
Oh no, he says N-word stick up men. That's what he says.
Yeah.
That's right.
Can we, you know what? I'm gonna say Mulanyan.
Yeah, Mullen.
Mulanyan.
That's got to be like, that is one of the crazy things about Sopranos, is looking up
Yeah.
all these different like terms and what everything mean. Like
The Moolies.
Oh, what is that one? I can't remember. There's another one.
Afangul.
Afagulu, yeah. It's also, there's something interesting in a lot of these movies where the race thing comes into it so much. Like when you were talking about before, the black guy that followed the woman into her house, and he was just like, there's a reason why, they knew that, because it's like, well, none of us are black, and B, like, we all know each other in this neighborhood. Like there's this I think more so then than there is now, this kind of like stick to your own.
Oh, no.
Like,
this is still a thing. This is happening with me. Like
Right.
I'm sure I've talked about this on the podcast, but my parents are immigrants from Fiji, and there is very much this stick to your own kind mentality still. Like it's an ethnic thing, it's an immigrant thing.
It's the right thing. No, I'm just kidding. No.
But it's impossible for a second generation, or like the new generation, people that grew up or were raised in the new country that they've, not the country that they moved from, but like, it's impossible. And yeah, it is 100% like that. People do look at other races. Sorry, people from these cultures, these tight knit communities, look at people of other races, and they're like, "Oh, it's their problem," or it's them. Like, it's
right. Well, and it's like a lot of these crime movies kind of have that element of, really, like, especially like a lot of Italian like mobster movies, looking down at like black people. Like there's a lot of those like, Italian mobster movies that have something to say about that kind of like relationship, between those two kind of cultures. And I just think that's kind of interesting, where it's like, you're doing the same thing,
Right.
like you're robbing and murdering people and selling
100%.
drugs, and it's like, but because you do it and all your E's have an apostrophe above them for some odd reason, you think it's fucking cool, and it's like, it's not like, that's not the way it works, man.
100%.
And that's
and I think just quickly,
no, you're good.
I think that the timing of this is incredibly important too, because it's not just the Italians who look down at people of color; it's everyone. The whole of society is looking down at African Americans at this point in time. So it's kind of like compound like that. I think that's compounding it as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's something I was going to say. I like The Godfather, but the mafia itself had so much influence over The Godfather that it's impossible to kind of have an objective top-down view of it. And I think that there's like, I believe that somebody in the mafia, I can't remember, but they were given the script for The Godfather, and they went and cut out every mention of the word mafia, and they did not want that being put into theaters and being known. And it's like, so they had a direct influence, but that movie makes them look extremely loyal. It makes them look extremely like classy and like,
very
right. Oh, we don't hurt women and kids and blah blah blah. And it's like, no, that's fucking bullshit. And it's like, this movie I think is a lot more closer to the truth of what day-to-day life was like for these guys, especially later on when Henry goes to prison. Like, we really see, the kind of uh, insane difference in lives that these people leave, lives that these people lead, both when Henry's like in and out of prison. But yeah, I feel like the Godfather definitely is a more jazzed up kind of like, oh, we have honor and blah blah blah. It's like you have about as much honor as a fucking tomato can. Like you don't honor shit, man.
Yeah, I did do some like research or reading, sorry, like just a little bit on like how the Godfather has been perceived and how the Goodfellas has been perceived, and yeah, I think you're completely on the money. Like Godfather is this like romantic look at the mafia. When okay, here's an example when they talk about it in The Sopranos, when they talk about Goodfellas, sorry, the Godfather in The Sopranos, it's this man. Look at how uh, look at how Francis did it. Look at how Francis showed them. Like it's just like they're
Mm-hmm.
looking up at it, and they mentioned Goodfellas once, but I can't remember in what context. But yeah, I was watching this special feature thing, and Scorsese, when he made the decision to make this movie, he did want to do something of the genre, like a genre film, and he also wanted to make a movie about blue collar workers, because that's the kind of like upbringing that he had. Right, he grew up in
Mm-hmm.
Queens, and he saw a lot of these guys, and he was like, This is something I know, right? Like when you think about like writers, is that famous quote like write what you know,
Right.
and this is exactly what it is here. Um, where are we? Where are we? Where are we? Okay, so none of it seemed like crime. Felt like Henry was enterprising. Our husbands weren't brain surgeons; they were blue collar guys. And then hard cut to where's the strong box? You fucking varmint! You. why
Oh
is he?
yeah,
Why?
God,
Why
such
has he
good
fucking
lines.
become fucking? Oh Jesus! I don't.
Like a 1930s criminal.
Right. There were no outsiders. You get this like moment with police with the search warrant. And they were just looking for a handout. Jimmy's wife, Mickey, used to spit on her own floor. That never made any sense to me. It was better to be polite and call the lawyer. And essentially, what we're doing is we're setting up how close everyone is, right? We got like a look in on like birthdays and events and all these photos with Jimmy and Tommy and these behind the scenes. Like these must be behind the scenes shots because they look so fun and it looks like casual of these guys
Yeah, a lot
just
more
chilling.
laid back.
Yeah. Um, Karen asked Henry for money. She describes the money using her thumb and her index finger, which is something that actually happened. She would describe it using its height measurement. Like I had this many inches of money in my
Yeah, I'd
bag at
suck
this point.
somebody's cock in a kitchen for that.
Right, me too. Especially if they look like Ray Liotta. Like then, like come on, man, whip
Yeah,
it out.
fuck, I'd suck Joe Pesci's dick if I could just walk up and get a stack of cash. You say?
That thing would smell like bolognese.
Yeah, that shows you even more how committed I am to
Right, salsich, salsich. June 11, 1970, right? Here we go. Billy Batts' party. And now this is actually a party that they threw for Billy Batts.
right.
Like the guys actually threw him for Billy Batts. They had food, they had booze, they had hookers. Billy Batts was part of the Gambino family. He was a made guy. He was with John Gotti. And like I said, Tommy DeSimone was only 20 at this time. And man, like I don't know how to talk about this scene because this scene is larger than life. Quite honestly, this is one of the best scenes in cinema history, man. I'm gonna be hyperbolic and say that, but yeah, there's like my brother is not a big film guy, but he worships this movie and he worships this moment. What a moment, man! Talk to me about this.
Yeah, well, I think specifically about like the murder of Billy Batts is the juxtaposition of the murder and then Atlantis by Donovan playing. And way down on the way to the
Yep.
ocean, and like that. This movie made me love that song. But it's the kind of like the juxtaposition of that And again, it does kind of start to feel like the beginning of the end of everything. It feels like the first really big mistake that they make, and it's a death, and it's unjustified, and it's unwarranted, and it's not allowed, and it's not good, but at the same time, it is a made guy. Like, it's kind of still within the realm of, well, it's like when they kill Spider, that's when it's like, okay, now you're way off. Like, I'm not saying that it was okay to kill Billy Bats, but it was okayer than killing Spider, because this was a made guy.
It's interesting how it works. Like, to us, to you and I, to normal people, the killing of Spider is much worse than killing of Billy Bats. But to
Right.
them, it's not really, right? Like, it's fine.
Right. Yeah, because it's not. That's just not the way it works. Like, he's not made. This guy is. Like, there are rules. This is not Nom Smokey. There are rules. Yeah, and I think this whole scene, I think it's super important that they leave Henry out of it, that they don't show him actually doing any of the violence. Even though we know he's perfect, we just saw him like smash a man until he pissed himself in the face. So like, we know he's capable, but that's different from kicking a man to death and then stabbing him and shooting him in the trunk of your car. Like, that's, again, violence, but just very different things.
But in the book, in the book, Henry describes himself as getting sick here. Like, he got sick from what's happening here because they recognize that this is so wrong. Like,
right. Well, and sometimes, because I have seen a few people that have kind of like not called out, but have called into question some of like Henry Hill's recollections of this. So like, you're painting yourself in an awfully good light.
Positive, yeah.
Like, so you were a guy who hung out with like rapists and murderers and fucking thieves, but you didn't do anything but rob people. I was like, I don't know about that, man. I'm sure Henry Hill has some of his worst shit never saw the light of day, and I could kind of understand why, if this movie is going to be as big as you think it is, you don't want people out there knowing your worst shit, and I feel like this kind of touches, I'd say you see probably 70% of the real violence that Henry Hill was capable of. It's like, I definitely think he's more violent than he's letting on. It's like, you don't run with a crew like this and be that successful by being the nice one in the group. It doesn't work that way. And I do think it's interesting that they're kind of leaving him out of this, but he's still culpable though, because he goes along with it. It's like, he couldn't go to Polly and say, hey, I didn't do it, but da 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 da. It's like, well, it happened in your establishment and you buried the motherfucker. Yep. It's like, that makes you just as culpable as these guys.
Well, this leads to the death of ultimately the death of Tommy as well, right? Like, so Paulie was the one. I mean, like, obviously they had to have a sit down, and Paulie had to give the okay for Tommy's murder in retaliation for Billy Bass's death, because he's under.
Let me ask you something. Do you know the real story of what got Tommy whacked?
It's this, and there's another guy that Tommy murdered as well, or is accused of murdering as well, isn't it?
Yes. But ultimately, the straw that broke the camel's back is there's actually a really, really great YouTube channel called History Buffs, and they cover Goodfellas. And the guy goes and he does like history, fact versus fiction and stuff. And he does like Gladiator and, a lot of like historical like epics and fictions and stuff. And he does Goodfellas. And one of the things that he talks about, and I had heard this before, but I just recently saw it again in History Buffs, was when Henry went to prison, I guess Tommy made a move on Karen and she rebuffed him. And I think he tried to rape her. And apparently was unsuccessful. Karen goes to Polly. Polly is banging Karen while Henry's in jail. So Karen is now Polly's. What
is the source for this?
Google it. No, I've heard this multiple times, that basically Karen was Polly's guma, and when Paulie found out about this, he went to the Gambinos and told them, hey, Tommy killed this guy, and basically gave him up and let him be killed because he tried to attack Karen.
That's really interesting. Okay, so I typed in on Google Paulie and Karen, and Google completes it as auto completes it as Paulie Karen affair. And the first the first search that comes up is Screen Rant, and they're fucking full of shit. So I'm not listening to Screen Rant. But yeah, the Reddit looks like people are in agreement. Yeah, interesting.
That was one of the that was one of the tips of the iceberg that led me to be like, okay, there's a lot more in this story that I'm really being led on. And I really do want to shout out history buffs. A lot of what I know, I've done a little bit of research on my own years ago. I do own Wise Guys. I think I read it like 4 or 5 years ago. I do not remember it. I've still got the audiobook. It's only like 3 hours. I was going to listen to it today.
It's very short. It's 260 pages. So that's why I didn't celebrate too hard when I was like, oh, yeah, I read the book.
Sure. Hey, but for you, that's like dog years, man. That's like 1,400 pages.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and like what really got Tommy fucking whacked, was like it wasn't anything about respect, it wasn't anything about the rules, it was about him just basically trying to rape this other guy's goon. If Karen had nothing to do with Paulie, doesn't matter.
Well, do you think that's why Paulie was that because Paulie can't say no, right? Like, I mean, in the sit down, Paulie can't be like, no, you're not killing him, whatever. Like that contributed to him, like, kind of like saying, yes, you can go ahead and kill Tommy.
You talking about Paulie to the Gambinos?
Yeah, in the sit down.
I believe it's the whole reason why he went to the Gambinos was to give up Tommy and say
because how else would the Gambinos know? Yeah, that's interesting.
That's what I'm saying. The murders were years ago, but he gave up Tommy after he tried to pull that shit on Karen.
So I found something on Reddit real quick. In Goodfellas, during the scene where Paulie and Jimmy are confronting Henry about his infidelity towards Karen, Paulie tells Henry to go and take a vacation, saying, quote, I know how to talk to her, especially her. And some Redditors are taking this as a reference to the real-life affair of Karen Hill that he had with Paul Vario. It's interesting.
It's a stretch, but it's interesting.
Didn't know that at all. That's wild. Yeah. That blows this whole thing wide open.
Dude, yeah, that was one of the craziest things that I was like, man, that totally changes the, again, it would add on so much to actually put that dynamic into the movie. And we, Tommy is just like it's almost like he would be too evil even for movie at that point. Like, dude, no, this guy's too over the top. And it's like, that's actually how he was. This is a sad thing.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with this information. Pretty, that's wild.
Yeah, mind blowing, right? Yeah.
You know what? Maybe I quit. But no, we're still doing the Billy Bat scene, right? So we didn't spend. Dude, if I was gonna break your balls, I'd tell you to go home and get your shine box, and then just quietly, Tommy's like, "No more shines, Billy."
Oh, dude. And it's that moment. It's that moment of. You just when you think that it's gonna be like, oh, Tommy said something, and again you're like, maybe he didn't hear it, and then it cuts to Frank Vincent going, what? And you're like, oh god, damn it, man. It's Red Dead Redemption 2 when someone's like, yeah, that's what I thought. It's like, like
it's so and it happens in Sopranos too. But these guys who have their pride, right? Like a lot of it is pride. And a lot of it is I want to save face in front of my friends. I do not want to be embarrassed. I have this status, but also Billy Bats is this guy who reminds me of Feach from Sopranos.
Right.
Like I just got out of prison. Things are exactly the same way to me, right? Like nothing's changed to me. When in reality,
Priel kind of thing.
Right, and when in reality, things have moved on. Things have moved on. People have become more powerful. Like to you, Tommy was this guy that just shined shoes, but in reality, Tommy's made a name for himself. Tommy has created a reputation, and you can't treat Tommy this way. Sure, Tommy is not a made man, and you are, but you. As Jimmy says here, you disrespected him a little bit.
Right. Well, even Paulie says it when
you insulted him a little bit. You insulted him a little bit.
Yeah. when he talks when he's complaining when he asks Paulie to take over part of the restaurant, and he's like, what do you want me to say? He's a good earner. I can't really do anything about it. He's a loose cannon, but he's a good earner.
Right, exactly. Fucking break up my party. Um, Jimmy said, this is from the book. Jimmy said we had to bury the body where it couldn't be found. He had a friend upstate with a dog kennel where nobody would ever look, and we drove by Tommy's house to pick up a shovel. His mother was already up and made us come in for coffee. She wouldn't let us leave. We have to have breakfast with a body parked outside. This whole thing. So, what happened is this didn't happen in the same night. This confrontation and then the murder. So the confrontation happened. A couple weeks went by, and then they kind of sort of ambush bats. I'm trying to find my thing here. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, my bad. So what happened is, Tommy goes up to Bats, and before he pistol whips him, he says, "Shine these fucking shoes," and he starts laying into him, dude. He full had a line, ready to go, yeah. Dude.
He was in the car jerk store. No, he was trying to come up with something, and that's jerk the line store. He went with. And it's still a shitty line. Shine these shoes.
Shine these fucking shoes. Yeah.
Yeah. Verb these nouns. Good job.
Where'd you get that? The toilet store? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's God damn. It's it's a stupid line anyway. I'd love if he were just he's beating him up and he's like, even though you're an adult, your comebacks fucking suck. And he keeps stomping his head in.
He's just fuck you, asshole.
Yeah. I hope you beat me up better than you shine shoes, you fucking asshole.
Oh my God, dude. I'm at that part of Sopranos where Philly Leotardo is with the car, the seat, it's off kilter.
Oh yeah, with Steve Buscemi.
Dude, it's so good. All right, here we go. So, look who's here. What happened? She's so sweet, man. When she meets them here, she's so sweet. And hard cut to them all around the table. She's like, he never comes around anymore. Ma, I've been working nights.
Yeah.
Hit one of those stairs. Yep, go on.
The crazy thing is, she is well aware of what he does for a living.
100%,
absolutely,
because she congratulates him on being a made man. Yeah, it's a big day,
right? That is crazy to me.
Yes,
that is fucking crazy. That it's not. I mean, maybe there's this whole subplot of her being please don't do this. Your father did this. My brother did this. Please don't become a part of this. And he does it anyways. And it's well, if you're going to do it, I might as well support you.
Right. But it's interesting it's interesting because they lie about why they need the knife and stuff. So maybe it's a whole thing of they don't want to bring the violence to her kind of thing, or they don't want to make her a part of it or something like that. But yeah, it's because right here,
Plaza.
Yeah, exactly. So, that reminds me, I need this knife. We hit the deer in his paw. The hoof got caught in the grill. It's a sin, Ma. I got to cut it off. And Henry's quiet, right? We know that this whole ordeal has kind of affected him. She pulls the painting out. Oh yeah, I like this one. One dog goes one way, the other dog goes the other. This guy's saying, "What do you want from me?" What do you want from me? And man, it's just crazy because they're saying that this guy looks like Bats, and we get that shot over the shoulder of the trunk outside, and ugh,
yeah,
wild, man.
The ominous thudding. It's almost like the telltale heart,
Murder was the only way everyone stayed in line. Hits just became habit for some of the guys. They were shooting each other all the time. No big deal. Tommy had killed a made guy and was considered untouchable. Needed a sit down, and then I just wrote the sit down. After the sit down part, I just thought of what's his name? What's in Sopranos? What's Carmine's number two's name again? Fucking from New
Oh,
York.
John Sacramone.
Yeah, Johnny Sack. What's this, the fucking UN now?
Yeah, what's this, the fucking UN? My favorite line is when he looks over Tony's shoulder and goes, fucking Christ, and he like takes off running through the snow. Man.
Every time Johnny Sack screams or yells or raises his voice is absolutely gold.
Man, it's such a good show.
Such a good
Somebody
show.
should start a podcast about it.
Yeah, anyway, we're at this gathering at Paulie's. Easy now. Easy now. Paulie pulls Henry aside, asks about Billy Bats, and Henry outright lies to Paulie, which is a very ballsy thing to do. Paulie says, keep your eyes open because they're busting my balls with this thing. Jimmy tells Henry that they got to get Bats' body out of there. And, one of my favorite shots ever. And I don't think it gets enough love because this silhouette shot of them digging with the red light behind them.
Oh, God, yeah.
People point at that shot of, Raiders of the Lost Ark when they're digging in the desert and the sun's going down behind them. This is that shot to me, man. I love this because you just get like Henry like jumping up to vomit, man. Like he's crouching on his knees and this whole thing about like here's a wing. Fucking sick fucks.
Oh, are you still a fan of the old hearts and lungs? Like,
God.
Jesus. I think I'm sure I've mentioned on here before, but like I was a butcher for a small amount of time, but having to haul the we would fill up these like 50-gallon barrels with just like bone and just fat and stuff like that. And having to haul that thing to the dumpster in the summertime and dump it and then smelling the stuff that had been in there because they only dumped it like once every 2 weeks. It's like I could only imagine how much worse this smelled buried underground for months. Like that, the smell alone. A smell can make you go unconscious. So like I feel like that might fucking do it.
Yeah. So Henry talks about this in the book. He talks about that. He says that this was a new car and he was never able to get the smell out, man. Like it was just infused in the fibers. He did everything to try and get the smell out. In the end, he had to burn and destroy the car. Like
I was gonna say,
yeah.
Is this like a BO situation in Seinfeld? Like, are we trying to keep it? And like come on, dude.
Yeah. Just thought about that. Sorry. And in reality, it was just Henry and Tommy that went up to retrieve the body. No Jimmy, right? So Jimmy wasn't there at that point. At that time, we see that Henry's got this girlfriend, Janice. Janice. There's a lot of things I could say that I'm not going to say. Henry's essentially set her up in this apartment, and this of course gets to be a big problem for Henry. In the book, he described Janice is described as Henry's escape, right? Janice can do anything she wants. You got it. Like this was a huge problem for Henry because he was addicted to this woman. Essentially, her real name was Linda, and he kept on going. He kept on leaving Karen because he just wanted to get away from the kids. He wanted to get away from Karen. They were fighting all the time. This is a quote from Linda from the book. She says, "I think I was his escape, and that wasn't so terrible. He was always under tremendous pressure. He and Karen were always fighting. They couldn't say 2 words to each other without a war. Every time we had a fight with her, he'd come to see me. Once she threw away all their car keys, and he got on a bike and he had to pedal 4 miles to my place. Karen was a very strong, demanding person. She put a lot of pressure on him. When they married, for instance, she made him convert. He was 20 or 21 at the time, and she made him get circumcised. It was horrible. He was walking around with a diaper for a month. Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Wild.
No way.
Insane, man. But what we'll do is we'll leave it there because we're kind of like about to move into this whole spider situation. So what we're going to do is take a very quick break because I really need a piss.
Same.
We haven't taken a break in an episode in a while, so we're going to do that because we've been recording for a while. I've been flapping my gums for a while. Um, yeah, we'll see you guys on the other side. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Hello, friends. Thanks so much for staying late and listening to this episode of Goodfellas. As you can see, we went quite long, and I haven't done a mid roll in quite a while. So, yeah, this is it's like riding a bicycle, you know. But anyway, again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening in and staying this late. And I hope you enjoy the second half of this episode. I'm just sort of like breaking in here to give you the lowdown on our Patreon to become a Green Room member. The Green Room is $5 a month, and you get a whole bunch of bonus episodes, basically. And you know, we are giving our listeners the chance to choose the episodes or choose the movies that we cover. So that's been fun. You know, we're covering Street Fighter soon, so that's all well and good. We actually went really long on this Goodfellas episode, and by the end of it, we were just absolutely exhausted. So we're like, we had to delay our Street Fighter episode, but we will record it in the middle of the week. Don't worry, Patrick. I know you're listening very intently. But yeah, it's $5 a month, patreon.com/midnight double feature. It'll do us a huge favor. We're independently run. You know, all of our money goes into this podcast. Well, not all of our money. I mean, I got to live, right? So, our money goes into this podcast. There's no sponsorship or anything like that. There's no advertising deal, whatever. It's just us, me and Colin, running this bitch. So whatever you guys can do, if you're enjoying the show, yeah, if you can, just donate $5 a month. It'll be amazing. But if you're not wanting to do that, that's completely fine too. We encourage you to rate and review us on iTunes. We encourage you guys to follow us on our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever. But yeah, please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you guys. But anyway, that's enough of me banging on. Let's get back to the the decline, if you will, of the mob life. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of Goodfellas. We'll see you guys next time.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Coming at you with the second half of our coverage of Goodfellas. Kicking it right off with really kind of what I've said a couple times, the beginning and the end, the death of Spider. These card games that get out of control. And, you know, we really kind of see, you know, not only, you know, obviously the violence that's just so passive and just so flippant, but also it's like the way that Tommy kind of looks down on anybody who's not a part of this, you know, even though he's not a made guy. It's like just looking down on anybody who's beneath him. You know, there is no respect, which I think is just kind of interesting. Like the total lack of any fucks given about this person's well-being. I think that oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's interesting to look at the old generation of, for lack of a better term, mafioso versus the new generation of mafioso that this movie is sort of like positing, right? I mean, like, you know, you've got Tommy who, like you said, doesn't have respect for anyone, you know, other than kind of like his closest confidants. Whereas, like, you know, people like Paulie, they're much more, I guess, strategic in the way they approach people or the way they, you know, view the world. This is also kind of like, I'm not going to say it's highlighted as strongly in The Godfather, but like, you know, you think about, for example, Vito, right? Like Vito kind of like talks to people very respectfully, and like, you know, he's very well versed in like the way that he moves through the world. And then you kind of have like Sonny, right? Like Sonny is he's very aggressive. He's very quick to anger. And I'm not saying that he's like disrespectful in the way that Tommy is, but like Sonny is, yeah, I don't know. Like like he's much quicker to anger than his father is. And yeah, I don't know. Like the differences between the two generations, or the two, like the old versus new mafioso, is really interesting.
Right. Yeah, this kind of like passing of the guard to these guys who are just total fucking hotheads, and I'm sure, I'm sure Paulie and what?
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm sure he posted this so it could like get mentioned on the podcast. But
Uh-huh.
Patrick just posted a blurry fucking photo of Billy Bats, and the caption is finalist for the Fuck Around and Find Out Hall of Fame. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, that's fucking hilarious. How hard can I poke this bear? Not very hard. But yeah, just this total lack of respect, like the difference between the guards, the changing of the order, and I'm sure they had hotheads like this back in the day, but I feel like they're not going to survive nearly as long back then as they would in this kind of like era of the mob, because they're earners, because they're making good fucking money. But the thing, it's just the callousness and the kind of like they're flippant about it. He shoots him in the foot over this drink, and then immediately just go like right back to playing cards. He's like,
yeah,
he's like, what's the bet? And he's like 707, or whatever, 800. It's like they just go right back to whatever the fuck they were doing. And the flippant nature of it is so insane to me, that just somebody getting shot in the foot and the bones all shattered, like that part always gets me. But it's him saying that, and then see, now I'm getting confused with the Tonys and the Paulies and the Joe Pesci, Tommy. Jesus, sorry. It's the way Tommy goes, don't get me started now. Like, you're the one who's gonna get mad. Like, what the fuck are you on about, man?
Like, what? He's like, you got me on the pay no mind list. Like, all right, you studying little prick, yeah.
That is one of the funniest lines in the movie, though. I thought you've been fucking doing this to me all night, you little prick.
Dance.
Not only do we start to see the decline of kind of like the life that they're living, but also their marriage is even more so going down the shitter and kind of spiraling the porcelain throne. But we get, obviously our boy Christopher Moltisanti, Michael Imperioli himself. I
almost didn't recognize him without a needle in his arm, but
yeah, I almost didn't recognize him with a smug air of entitlement. No,
I also didn't. I almost didn't recognize him without that hot piece of ass Adriana around him. Sorry,
yeah, I didn't recognize him without a dog underneath him. There's a Sopranos reference if you get it.
Little Cosette. I love that Tony knows the name of the dog, because it's Tony and he loves animals. Like, he's just such a
Tony Soprano. I like doing impressions, but Tony Soprano is one of the ones that I don't even fuck with, because it's so hard to do. Like, it's I can't tough. It's so you didn't think I was there for him. It tried it's so difficult to do Tony Soprano.
You've got friends.
In this house, she's a piece of ass, But
yeah, man. As they're fighting, just the little zoom in on like the daughter, man. It's
the Rain Brocco's kids. Yeah.
Is that actually true? Okay.
Wow. Because they're different ages at different times, so I don't know which one, but I want to say these ones are. But I might be wrong.
That one specific shot of the daughter kind of like leaning out of the door and just like looking around, man. Like, that one gets me a lot. Like, I don't know why, but that is, oh man, talk about being exposed to this kind of shit,
Right. Yeah. We get another card game, and one of the ballsiest, I don't know, maybe one of the semifinalists for Fuck Around and Find Out is Spider over here, because he pokes the bear and gets the claws. But
it's not. I think, and I'm really sorry if I've been doing this throughout the episode, but one of my favorite LSG episodes is when they covered Goodfellas, right? And I listened to that quite a long time ago, but I'm sure subconsciously a lot of it is coming up. So I apologize if we have crossover listeners or mutual listeners. But the moment I think this was raised in that episode, it's not the fuck you, Paul, fuck you, Tommy, or like go fuck yourself, Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the insult. It's the friends. It's Tommy's friends who
Right.
like really turn this. You know, it's Jimmy being like, "Are you gonna let him take the?
Right.
I'm actually, you know, like it's the egging on that's really that I think really does it.
They legitimize it. You know,
Yes,
them
yes.
saying something about it is now,
I have lost face. I have lost
right.
points with these guys.
Well, and also it's like, hey, don't sit there and stare at him from behind the bar after you just told him to go fuck him. Like, I would want to beat the fuck out of you staring at me behind the bar like that. One of my favorite lines in this, he shoots him and they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? He's like, he's dead. He's like, what can I say? I'm a good shot. I'm like, oh, you're a good shot from what, 15 feet away with an automatic pistol? Like, fuck you, dude. Not an automatic, like semi-automatic pistol.
The way they, again, the sound design of this movie is very underrated. Like the way they jack up the sound of this like pistol and the sound, like, everything just stops. All the sound design just goes out the window. There's nothing. It's just dead air. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, you know, like it's Jimmy who is the one who is like, what is wrong with you?
Right.
And if you've read the book, if you know anything about Jimmy Burke, the fact that they have Jimmy Conway or Jimmy Burke saying this to Tommy when Jimmy is the fucking violent motherfucker.
Right.
Like, that is something, you know?
Well, and you know that Jimmy's the only person at that table that can say something and still live. You know, like anybody else absolutely. Who's like, dude, what the fuck? It's like you're going to probably catch the other end of that barrel yourself.
And it's the quietness of Henry going over there and being like, he's dead. Like
and again,
that's when you know.
I think that the way they paint Henry in this movie, he's the one to go over there to check the body, and he's the one who's disturbed by it. And I'm like, okay.
That wasn't the way it was done. Like the book kind of like sort of throws this away a little bit. Like the book is just like, this is done in like 2 or 3 lines or like less than a paragraph pretty much. Like it was more like a one time, like, you know, Tommy shot this guy, Spider, like this kid, like whatever.
Jesus.
Like they never like describe Henry going over there, like sort of like, you know.
It's so crazy because that's like such a hinge of the movie, you know, where things turn. This next scene just is burned into my memory of you know, we get Karen straddling Henry's chest with a loaded revolver, and the shot of not only like I love the shot of Ray Liotta, but her holding that gun into the thing, into the camera is like a contender for best shot for me. Like it's so good, and her hand is just shaking, and you're watching her barely be able to keep, like, because it's framing her face in such a way, and she can barely keep that frame like on her face.
I love that the camera is focused on the end of the barrel, so like her face is like blurred out, and you know, it's such an incredible shot. But like, yeah, what leads up to this is essentially she ends up hounding in the movie it's Janice, but in the book it's Linda. She's hounding like Linda outside the apartment. The way she got this information, dude, is kind of crazy. Like the book steps it out. She I think she called so Henry owns this bar called The Suite, and she worked at The Suite, and Henry had spent so much time with her at The Suite that someone had picked up more than a few times and says, "Oh, hi Linda, how are you going?" And it's like, "Yeah, I'll go. Do you want to talk to Henry, Linda?" And that's how she kind of caught on. And then like, yeah, she ended up finding out where she lived. She is nearly 9 months pregnant at this point, by the way, as well, when she's outside the door. Just like slamming on the fucking, you know, intercom. And yeah, this is wild, man. But like, yeah, the gun thing on the bed actually happened, and Karen described it as I was never going to pull the trigger. I just kind of wanted to scare him. And Henry describes it as you know, I was so close to the gun, I could see, I knew like it was loaded. I knew it was loaded because I kept it loaded, and I could see the bullet in the chamber in the fucking thing. And yeah, man, like, dude, the way he describes, he's like, yeah, I knocked her off and I belted her, and I was like, fuck, Jesus Christ.
I mean,
belted.
I gotta be on. Like, I don't know. If you wake up and your wife has a loaded gun in your, I'm like, man, yeah, I would probably want to knock their fucking teeth out too. Like,
Oh, yeah.
oh my god, like, and you know, I definitely understand like her, you know, where she's coming from, all his infidelities and lying about stuff, but
It's a lot. It's a lot.
I never understand. Like, they're like, man, if I find my husband cheating on me, I'd kill him. I'm like, why? That just seems like a bit. But like, we don't even kill fucking rapists. Like, why are we killing a guy who cheats on his wife? Like, come on.
Yeah, I think in the book, it kind of makes it a little bit more understandable because, like, by this point, Henry had been in and out of jail a lot, so he'd been sent to Rikers Island a lot, and she really, really pulled for him a lot. She had done a lot of work for him, and you know, he'd left her kind of like holding the bag essentially while he's sleeping around with her, and
Right.
yeah, turns out these are not good people.
um, and yeah, I mean, I think one of the most iconic lines in this movie when he finally slings her off and she just kind of sits there for a second. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like my brother would show me that and die laughing. And the first time I saw it, I laughed my fucking ass. I was like, what the fuck? It's just not what I thought it was going to be. And now it's like, oh, Jesus, man, this is fucking brutal.
I gotta come home for this.
Yeah.
Like him, like smacking that fucking little cabinet, the side cabinet, dude. Oh, this is one thing that Casino kind of cops shit about is because Sharon Stone's character in that movie sort of also ends up being a little Karen Hill-ish, like sort of like she becomes this very depressed, I guess depraved woman who's just after her husband. It becomes a little repetitive. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel it. I feel like that's you know, because I was going to say, is Margot Robbie's character like that in Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so not really, but she doesn't go into this the amount of depression that Sharon Stone's character and Lorraine Bracco's character does in these two movies, but there is like the whole ordeal of like them, Jordan Belfort kind of going in and like taking his kids away from her and stuff like that. And there's a lot of like domestic. There's some domestic violence in that one too, but I don't think that Margot Robbie's character is not as broken as these women are.
Yeah. Well, after we get this scene, we get Polly and Jimmy coming to talk to man, it's all these Y names that are fucking me up. Coming to talk to Henry, and basically, hey, you know, we are not animal. You know, you got to go back.
We're not animal.
Yeah,
dude, I love Jimmy. Jimmy just straight up being like, you know, she comes over, you know, she's talking to Mickey. I can't do it.
Yeah. What I love the, you know, and he's like, you know, this I can't do this upon which I have no interest to become. And it's like, well, okay, dude. Right. And it's my favorite one. And he's like, no one's saying you can't do what you want to do. He's like, it is what it is. You know? And it's like, what are you? You're just vaguely gesturing and saying like shit.
Right. One thing I wanted to mention is they talk about, you know, she's not going to get a divorce, and that's something that's really important, I think, to point out with these guys is like a lot of these guys are very strictly Catholic, right? I mean, we see it in Sopranos. Divorce is a no-go with these guys. Like divorce is almost as big of a crime as it is as murder. Like, you know, it is once you're together, you know, especially if you have kids.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and these kind of guys, as a line of work, you know, murder is not off the table, but divorce is, you know, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Basically say, hey, listen, you got to go home. He's like, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but hey, look at me. You got to go home. And like, that's it's one of Polly's best moments, but
Sylvana's so good, man.
Yeah. she'll kill him, but she won't divorce him. Hilarious. That's such a good line. He says to Henry, "Hey, why don't you go down to Florida instead of one of our other associates? Go down, take a little time off with Jimmy." He's like, "Yeah, you come. I mean, it'll be good." He's like, basically, just go and collect on this debt, I believe. And so we see him like going down to Florida. They must really feed them to the lions down there, because he gave it right up. It's like we spent the rest of the day at the track. When we got home, though, we were all over the newspaper. Turns out the fucking guy's sister was a typist for the FBI. That is another great shot of it pulling up slowly on her in the room, and there's all these dudes around, just surrounded. There's probably
she's hysterical.
There's probably 11 people in the shot at one point. It's like, it's so fucking tight.
He's so good with blocking, like with positioning the people where they are in the shot. One of my favorite shots, and the movie's not even fucking out yet, is the trailer for Killers of the Flower Moon. It's this last shot, and it's like it's the voiceover of Leo being like, "Can you name the wolves? Can you point out the wolves in this picture?" And it's literally like all these like white men who are just like sitting in one room or standing in one room. And everyone is blocked out. It looks like a fucking painting, but it's not. I gotta show it to you. It's so good.
All right.
Yeah. So this happened. This whole Tampa going down to Florida thing happened. The lion thing did not happen. This was kind of like a bar fight, or like a bar, like something to do in the bar. I can't fully remember, but essentially, yeah, like they killed this guy. His sister was a typist for the FBI. And the sister came into work one day, and she was fucking bawling her eyes out, and the investigators were like, "What the fuck is going on?" And then she explained, and yeah, that's how they kind of caught onto it as well.
Wow. Well, it's just some of like, to rat out your own brother over something that's like, it's already happened. Like it's not going to, like, it's not like, yeah, I don't know, stuff like that where it's like, just keep your mouth shut. Like,
we're gonna get a better one later. I'll explain it. It's I know you probably know it, but it's a big one, ratting out family members. Like, yeah, wild.
But yeah, we get them basically saying, "Hey, listen, you got to go back home." They end up throwing this guy almost to the lions. His sister rats him out. And again, we're moving so fucking quickly. We go from a fight with Karen to Janice's, and now we're in Miami, and now we're back. We're in court, and now we're in prison in 5 minutes. Like this movie, literally, like, I think it's like a minute. Like a minute 18 and 30 seconds we're in Miami, and on the 20-minute mark we're in prison. And it's like, that is so insanely fast. But like, I think that's one of the great parts of the movie, is it's like, maybe in retrospect there are parts of it that feel a little sped up, but at the same time, like, it fits. Like, we're jumping over times of like over like narratives and stuff, or like we're jumping over time with this one narrative. And really, what we're doing is we want to get Henry to prison, because it's, and much like George Young in Blow, it's like, I went in with a bachelor's in marijuana and walked out with a master's in cocaine, and it's that kind of thing. Like, in real life, from what I understand, this is where he started getting a lot of like drug connections and stuff, was while he was in prison.
Yeah. So a lot of the book is the book spends quite a bit of time on this 10-year, well, not 10-year stretch, but his time in prison. Like, he made friends so quick. He was actually really scared, like, when he kind of went in. It all felt very sterile. It felt very cold. And then, like, obviously once he comes in, like, Paulie at this time was spending time, like, was in prison already on a fraud charge or something like that. He was in there for a year. Johnny Deere was there, who was also pretty high up. It's all pretty wild. And the book explains this whole sequence of, like, the prison thing was a whole thing. There was a whole point where, like, he basically figures out the system and, like, how to get things in and out, and food and supplies. He's basically like the Red of, like, the prison system at this point, from like Shawshank. Red Can't remember his
Hmm.
last name, Rose last name. But like, there was another prison nearby called Allenville, which is um very, very lax in its sort of like security. Like it's for like minimum security people, and he ends up getting transferred there. He does this whole thing where he sweet talks someone, and like yeah, like he's able to get out of the prison and meet fucking Karen on like a dirt road, so she can give him supplies. And yeah, this is
That's
like this is a
crazy.
whole thing, man. It's a whole thing.
Well, yeah, and this really, this whole thing of Henry going to prison, popping the drugs in the limo, going, now take me to jail. I just honestly, like, I feel like there's the stereotype of like gangster movies, and a lot of people point to stuff like Scarface. I don't really like Scarface, to be 1,000% honest. Like, I just don't think it's a great uh like kind of gangster movie, and it's okay, but I think it's overrated. But that to me is a truly fucking gangster line. It's popping the last of your drugs and going, take me to jail. Like, that's like this fucking baller. um but of course, he ends up getting a 10-year sentence. He and Jimmy both. Jimmy ends up going to a different prison from Henry, which is important, which is why we don't see him here. That basically, what does he say? When people start thinking of prisons, they think of all those guys in the bars, and all those little rooms. That wasn't like us. We weren't animals. We lived like kings. We owned the joint. Him basically, I think what I heard, it cost them like a few $1,000s a week to do this, to keep the guards like
Oh
off
yeah,
their back and shit. Like, it was hella
yep,
expensive. Um,
definitely
and
expensive.
one of the
And
things I loved watching history buffs is he was like, I thought for sure that this was going to be over, like this was going to be exaggerated or something, but that actually was not the case. Like, if anything,
yeah,
it's a little underplayed, like maybe a little over exaggerated. um Hang on real quick. Sorry. Okay, there we go. The But the whole thing of, this whole time in prison is so interesting to me, even though it's so brief, because we actually see that, no, you see them like dealing with cops and dealing with people, and you're like, no, now they're in prison, now they're behind bars. It's like, no, even there it doesn't work. Everything still is the same. Everything is in their favor. um I absolutely, like, I don't know, I kind of like it's kind of hilarious that, like, no matter what, like, these guys could be on death row and they could probably have gladiator matches in the showers. It's just like so ridiculous, the power these guys wield.
absolutely insane, man. I completely agree. It's not prison. Like it's not. They're out here having fucking holidays. Oh man, like the garlic shot. Like come on,
Yeah.
like the garlic shot is just fucking a thing of its own. And then like they have the system for like who cooks and stuff like that. Johnny Dio did the meat.
Hmm.
Johnny Dio, I full went into a whole. As I'm reading this book, I went into a rabbit hole on this, man. Like this guy Johnny Dio was in prison for blinding a newspaper columnist like with acid. He threw sulfuric acid at this guy's
Jesus.
face. This guy Victor Riesel. And essentially, like, yeah, Johnny Dio, like, created fake labor unions, to help Jimmy Hoffa become general president of the Teamsters. This, like, his case went all the way up to, like, fucking Robert Kennedy, who was working as a lawyer for the Attorney General's department. Like, look up Johnny Dio. It's fucking wild, man. Like, this whole situation.
That's blinding
Yeah.
someone, like, oh, God, what year is this?
Right,
um
exactly. What is he, Two-Face from fucking Batman?
yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, what, you just walk around with the beaker, like, what the fuck? um but but yeah, basically saying, like, we're not living like pigs, we're not living like animals, we were separate from everyone. And we see the lobsters, the steak. He's like, how do you want your steak? Medium rare. Oh, an aristocrat. I've always loved that line, because that's how I get my steak as well.
Medium rare,
um
yeah. Of course. There's no other way. I mean,
I
Come on,
mean, I could see rare. Like it's a little too much for me, but I'll eat a rare steak. But
get the fuck out of here.
anything after mid rare, I'm like, okay. And we see how Henry's making a living behind bars, selling drugs and keeping
Yeah.
up. I love that he's trying to be so secretive about it. And Paulie's like, later on, he's like, yeah, I knew you were selling drugs. Like, what the fuck do you think? Like, who do you think's paying all this shit to like protect you?
Right. He says you did what you had to do. Right.
Right.
But like, so Henry knows at this point very, very well that Paulie Verio had a no drugs policy, right?
Right.
And we found out later, like the reason for that is exactly what he says. Basically, Paul Verio had this very close friend who went to eat at a restaurant one day, fucking nodded. He just fucking literally nodded his head at an associate and got time for it. And the reason why is because that nod was interpreted by law enforcement as okay, go ahead and do the drug deal.
Wow.
Which is wild. And the guy got like 25 years or some shit. And that's why
Jesus.
Paulie's like, nope, no drugs. Stop it.
Well, yeah, and I think that the mob in general, I think, had that kind of very strict no drugs policy, but Vario for sure was a lot more like rigid about it. We're like, I mean, the crazy thing, I can't remember who it was. Maybe they talk about him in Sopranos, but he was like no drugs, no drugs, no drugs, and would like kill people for it in his family. And then it came out all these years later, he ratted on everybody, and he was selling drugs, and he was ratting on other dealers and getting their business once he ratted them out. It was like, holy shit! Like, there's no fucking honor with these people, mobsters. I mean, not Italians. The
And Italians. Speaking of no honor. When Karen arrives, and like obviously she freaks out like about Janice's name on the fucking thing on the register. She's throwing all the bread and stuff. She says, no one's helping me on the outside, like, and that's exactly what happened. So Henry here in this scene says, yeah, like we're on our own. Once Henry went inside, Karen was essentially just cut off. She was like cut off from Paulie. She was cut off from everyone. Like they wouldn't give her a dime. They wouldn't help her out at all. There was no loyalty. Like I think The Sopranos does this thing of like, for example, for a very short amount of time, when Pussy goes like into the witness protection program, right?
Mhm.
Quote end quote. Tony looks after his wife just for a little bit though. Like, I mean, obviously that kind of like falls by the wayside, but like, yeah, like he gives her like that car, like the garage, like the car shop and all that stuff. And, Sopranos does that of like, we help our spouses when they're in, like whatever, when we're predisposed or indisposed. But this was like, no, she didn't get any help. She once went to someone to ask for the money that was owed to her, like to Henry, and they said, essentially, they said, just fuck off. Like, no.
God, that's well, and I think even Tony says something when Christopher Moltisanti is being made, and he was like, and if, by doing this oath, like you will, and God forbid anything should happen to you, we will be there to like make sure that you're covered, and that I think that's super interesting, but it's like I wonder why with Karen, like what was the reasoning why? Because I feel like that's not commonplace from what I understand from like a lot of, but I might be wrong, but basically, yeah, like you said, she flips out at the sight of Janice Rossi. Let her do it. That God, she's so good. She slings everything out on the counter. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just gonna say I think she's a lot better in this than I think she's in Sopranos. I don't love Jennifer Melfi. I'm sorry. I know that might be a bit of blasphemy, but yeah.
I like her when she's not Dr. Melfi. I like her when she's, I like her when she's Dr. Melfi, but I like her a lot more when she's Jennifer, and she's Jesus Christ, and she's getting mad at Tony because she has to lamb it in like one of the seasons. But I really enjoy seeing this kind of basically really how kind of like rock bottom they are. And, but it's about to, where you think it peaked before, it's about to like peak even more now, but it's like the morality is going farther down, but the pocket is going further up. And Henry tells her, he's like, that's what happens when you go away. We're on our own right now. We just have to be really, really careful. 4 years later, Henry gets out, tells them to pack their fucking bags and move. And they live in like a totally reasonable accommodation. Like, it's like, yeah, it might be like a 1-bedroom, the girls have a bunk bed and Karen has this really nice, it's like a nice, cute little, maybe one bedroom apartment or something. And it's like, we're living in the fucking gutter with Jesus.
We're in fucking Ethiopia right now.
Right.
That's what he's fucking thinking, dude. Like,
it's
he's like, what?
Both my kids are blind and my wife has become an idiot person. And he's like, what? No, what? You live in a...
When it cuts from that scene to that woman carrying that giant fucking dish of like meat and shit, I'm hungry. I'm hungry right now, man. I'm just like looking at that and I'm like, that looks... I had a
calzone for dinner and I'm still fucking hungry.
Nice.
And it was huge. Chicken bacon ranch calzone is so good. But yeah, this oh God, and the meat and the whole meal looks absolutely great. But I do love that. I love seeing us being in a prison visitation room with some bald guy getting his dick sucked next to a baby getting changed on a table, to here's these big, and Scorsese loves these things, the big sweeping shots, like the waiters bringing in the tables and like all these big sweep and these overhead shots of her, putting the meat down. And I think that that's definitely symbolic of like, meat's back on the menu, and I think that's so interesting, focusing on kind of like the food and how they're always eating. I think it's Christopher Moltisanti. He's like, Jesus Christ, is that all you fucking people ever talk about is food? But
they're what is it when Steve Buscemi is like joking about like the makeup of Tony Soprano's blood is like 78% of his body is like Zeppola.
At the same dinner, we see Paulie giving Henry the 10th degree. Gribb's got 20 years just for saying hello to some fuck. And he pops him one. I guess I think that's improvised, because you can really see Ray Liotta's like, he kind of looks a little pissed at first that he smacked him in the face. He's kind of got this like, motherfucker. But he tells him, if you see anybody fucking around with the shit, I don't care if it's my own son. He's like, no, why would I? No, Paulie, why? And it just hard cut to him playing around with like $2,000 worth of cocaine on a table, just like making snow angels and shit.
One thing that's interesting is also Paulie says to watch out for Tommy and Jimmy, right? He says that Jimmy's a cowboy. He's a wild guy. Like, he's not part of like... he says Tommy's a cowboy. Jimmy's not one of us, right?
Right. Yeah. Henry's talking about, I made $12,000 in my second week of selling cocaine. All I had to do was tell Sandy I loved her every once in a while. Fucking piece of shit, man.
This woman, Sandy, she got really, really involved with Henry. Like, she was like wanting to discuss like where they were going and stuff like that. And I don't think her name was Sandy or something else. But this woman's, by the way, from Entourage. She's got a pretty big role in Entourage.
She's in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And here we are back on the elevator, going climbing the building of life over here with Henry, and we're seeing all of his deals like come through. And but that's the thing, it's not just, let us get a good house and just get back on our feet. It's, let's get this insanely decorative room and the TV that comes through the wall, and crazy. Literally I think they're at Jimmy's parole meeting, and they're flashing the money. Do you know who this? I think it's his parole officer. Do you know who this guy is? The guy who walks up.
It's Tobin Bell.
Yeah, fucking Tobin
Jigsaw,
Bell,
baby.
Man.
Crazy.
Yeah, I just thought that was really cool. But again, it's not, as there is a point where you're kind of like rooting for Henry, and then there comes like this time when it's like, okay, dude, now you're just being a fucking dick. Like, it blows my mind at the end of this when he's like, that 60 grand was all we had, and it's like, look around you, dude. You like, you could sell half of this shit and have, more than you need. And basically just living in the lap of luxury. He starts talking to Maury about this, what will end up becoming the Lufthansa heist. And we're kind of like sprinkling the seeds because we're about to jump right into it. And I'd love more. I've been planning this caper all my life. Henry lays it out for us here, basically. Whatever Johnny Roast Beef had to have these guys all tied up. Even Stax Edwards got involved.
Johnny Roast Beef.
Johnny Roast Beef.
That is they made that up for the movie. That is not in the book. But Johnny Roast Beef, that's fucking hilarious.
I mean, that's hey, I'll take it. And these were the guys Jimmy put together for what turned out to be the biggest heist in American history, the Lufthansa heist. Tommy and Carbone were going to grab the outside guard and make us get us in the front door. Frenchie and Joe Buddha had to round up the workers. Johnny Roast Beef had to keep them all tied up and away from the alarms. Even Stax Edwards got in on it. So it's like, and Samuel L. Jackson, by the way, which still blows my mind that it's like
crazy.
There's a movie with Tobin Bell and Samuel L. Jackson and Christopher or Michael Imperioli.
Tobin Bell also shows up very briefly in The Sopranos too.
Oh, does he? I can't remember.
He's the core. He's the guy, the military.
He's the military academy guy,
the boarding school. Yeah,
he's the record shop owner in in Seinfeld, the asshole one. Again, we're it feels like we're revving up and things are back on the up and up again. And Maury's already busting, Jimmy's balls for an advance on the money. We meet, I think, Lois, the baby. I always thought she was super cute. Lois, the babysitter. I don't know what it is.
I hate you so much.
Man. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's Lorraine Bracco, of course, Lorraine Bracco, but like, I don't know what it is, but watching it this time around, it's like there's something Jenna Fisher-y about Lorraine Bracco's like face. When I'm looking at the two of them now, there's something in the shape of their face that makes me think of Pam from The Office. Which, I mean, I've always had a big crush on Pam.
Of course.
Karen or Pam?
Pam. I look.
I don't
Karen
know.
Filippelli's really cute, but what is it when when fucking Kevin is like doing the breakdown? He's like, I think Karen's got a better face. Pam has bigger boobs.
Yeah, Jenna Fisher is just like, oh my god, yeah.
It's the voice, it's the shyness. Yeah,
she broke so many hearts in the early 2000s, like in the mid 2000s.
I mean, James Gunn, right? James Gunn would go with that.
Yeah, that's true. And
have you seen James Gunn's wife now? Jesus Christ.
No, I have not. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, he is a silver fox now. It makes sense. But he gets Lois the babysitter involved. Now we're really revving up production. When we're having to get a machine that presses our cocaine balls together. I think we're starting to hit the industrial revolution of our drug phase.
The peak, if you will.
Yeah. And, Henry, I like the setup of Henry bitching about the dishwasher and how she needs to clean this place up and stuff. And that totally comes back to bite him in the ass.
Oh, yeah, baby. Because, yeah, man, like the like that, you don't really get that until the end of the book. Like you get that in the end of the movie. Like the detectives are like, yeah, they're literally like wiping their fingers all over the thing. And because she didn't fucking clean the shit, like you're literally kind of caught red-handed here or white-handed.
Right. You can't argue with it. It's right in front of you. Of course, she ends up getting him back with, as she starts kissing him and he's like, all right, jacket's off.
Yeah, right.
one of my favorite parts. Nobody knows for sure just how much was taken during the daring pre-dawn raid at the Lufthansa cargo terminal. The FBI says 2 million. The Port Authority police say 4 million. Jimmy, like,
Dude, the
that's
camera
great.
underneath him as he's like slapping like the wall is just it's in my head.
So
Like,
interesting. Such a not the choice I would have thought.
no.
Like, I love it. It's so like manic and just like, oh my god.
Do we want to
get
talk about the Lufthansa heist really quickly?
okay.
So yeah, it absolutely was the biggest heist in U.S. history. 5 million in cash and 875,000 in jewelry stolen. It was equivalent to 27.6 million in 2023.
Jesus.
James Burke, an associate of the Lucky's crime family of New York, was reputed to be the mastermind of the robbery, but was never officially charged in connection with the crime. Burke is also alleged to have either committed or ordered the murders of many co-conspirators in the robbery, both to avoid being implicated in the heist and to keep their shares of the money of themselves. The money and the jewelry have never been recovered. The heist's magnitude made it one of the longest investigated crimes in U.S. history. The latest arrest associated with the robbery was made in 2014, which resulted in an acquittal. Also, just remembering this from the book, so Henry is surprised by this in the shower because he didn't know what day it was going to happen. Nobody told anyone when it was going to happen. Essentially, like Jimmy had like recruited all these people, so Angelo Sepe, Joseph Costa, Louis Cafora, Joey Manry, like these people were all, like pretty like tight-lipped about this until the day of, and a lot of people were surprised that it went down.
Yeah, I remember listening to a documentary at work about it one day, and just the whole breakdown of it. It was that could be a movie in and of its own. You know,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
that would be a great like mini series or something.
I think this in my mind is the undoing, right? Like this is the big like, okay, now the cops are never going to get off us because of just the magnitude of this. So the heat is going to turn up, plus also the paranoia is going to turn up. Like Jimmy's paranoia really, really undoes a lot of the family's work here.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's it basically unravels everything and ends up being this like Shakespearean murder plot. But these guys end up just if one shows up in a pink Cadillac, the other one a fucking $4,000 like mink coat. This is so. Oh, dude, the muttering under his breath of "This is my mother's name." He's, what? What'd you say? What did you say? And that is so tense. Like
Incredible, man.
I thought he was going to kill him. Like I said, he's going to fucking hit him or something, man. Because like he's already pissed, and then he kind of mutters something under his breath, and it's like, oh, just shut the fuck up. Dude.
Yeah, right. Stop. Like you got to know when to stop. But it's wild, man. Because like this is Johnny Roast Beef, right? So I don't know if he's a made man or not. But here he is talking to this Irish guy. Like it's what a weird like
right.
kind of like dynamic that this is.
He's like, you're a muggle. You don't fucking tell me, like, you don't tell me my shit. Like I'm Italian,
I love
like
the double finger point, by the way, from De Niro. Just to,
oh yeah,
what's the matter with you?
Take it back.
Five times he goes to Johnny Rosebeef. What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? The fuck is the matter with you?
And I love they have this whole thing about playing it small and not being an idiot. And he gives Henry a fat wad of cash, and he goes, "I got the most expensive tree they had," and it's the tackiest, like shittiest looking Christmas tree. I'm like, really? Like Jesus, that's awful. A white and purple Christmas tree.
Yeah, it is awful. It was in the book too. Before we move on, this really quick moment in this bar where Tommy is like talking to his like I guess Kumar or something, and he's like, "Don't fucking talk to anyone, I'll kill you." She's talking to her friend who's like, "Oh, he'll really kill me. He's really jealous." She's like, "That's great.
That's great." Yeah, Jimmy's wife.
Brilliant, man.
And slowly again, this is where the downhill shuffle, as I like to call it. We get the death of Stax Edwards. which is an
Yes.
insane. Like, whoa! Like when that happens, you're just not totally out of frame, like not expecting it all. Um,
6 times he was shot in the
phew,
face and the body.
Jesus.
The shit with
Uh,
the coffee pot dude. Like,
yeah. Him arguing, is like, take it with you. Stax was always crazy. Instead of getting rid of the truck like he was supposed to, he got stoned, went to his girlfriend's, and by the time he woke up, the cops had found the truck. It was all over the television.
yeah,
It's basically that kind of sealed his fate right there. And this kind of starts, this domino effect of people getting murdered slowly but surely. It doesn't happen all at once, but eventually it kind of starts to creep along. And while this is going on, we get the great news that Tommy's going to be made. That this is kind of something that they've all been like hoping for, because it's their foot inside the door of the made guys like world, because this is never going to happen for Jimmy
Jimmy.
or Henry.
Yeah, especially for Jimmy. This was a big deal for Jimmy, man, because he, like you said, he had a link, he had a way in, an official
Mhm.
way in.
Right. And I mean, just the fact that they're going to be protected under a guy who's made, like, no, these are my guys, um, and I love seeing Jimmy's kind of happiness at that. It's like I can't believe it. This guy's going to be boss someday. And it's like one of the only times, like Floyd say, you see this real emotional kind of response from him of he's so happy that Tommy's getting made. Maury comes up again asking about this fucking money. I've had it up to here with him. Fuck him. Chip. What do you say? Cheap cigarette selling Mick or whatever. It's something great. Henry manages to calm him down. Oh, Henry boy, the pipes are calling. Like it's just someone like Maury you can't take serious, because he's just so constantly like on the edge. You know what I mean? Like, I'll jump, I'll do it, I'll jump, and it's like, okay, Jesus Christ, like fucking do it. Like it's like his emotions are always up to like that 10 or 11. It's like you never see him just fucking relax.
One of my favorite shots in this movie is around here when um when, when Jimmy's at the bar and it's like it slows
Bam, bam,
down in
bam,
slow
bam,
motion,
bam, bam,
bam, bam,
bam.
bam, 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 and he's just smirking, and he's thinking about it, man. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it.
Right. And that's when I knew Jimmy was going to whack Maury. That's how it happens. That's how fast it takes for a guy to get whacked. And him kind of breaking it down. But you feel like Henry is trying to diffuse it. Nobody listens to him anyways, blah blah blah. Like he's
Henry really likes
downplaying.
Maury. Yeah.
Right, and he's really downplaying Maury, but I understand, like, loose lips sink ships. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying I would murder the dude, but he would be, out of all of them, he'd be the first one to flip. He'd be the first one to rat everybody out in a heartbeat. And I think Henry wouldn't be far behind him. They're not these violent guys like the rest of, like, they're not really cut out for doing hard time in prison more than 4 years. Like, we're talking about decades in prison. Like, they're never gonna be cut out for stuff like that.
Marty Krugman was the guy's real name. And Henry liked him a lot. That's why he kind of like went to bat for him. Yeah.
Well, in the end, didn't do shit because he gets a fucking ice pick to the back of his spine.
Oof.
How do you like tasting your own spinal fluid? And it's great. Just the whole thing. He's like, oh, let's go get a bear claw or something. Oh yeah, come on, like, and they're all talking. Who loves you more than I do, huh? And then 10 seconds later, your brain is powering down from. It's like, that is so crazy to think about. And I like what Henry says, towards the end. He's like, your enemies don't come at you, like running up right at you. They come with smiles, and they come acting like allies. And this,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say one thing that I really wanted to say is Jimmy, like, as they're laughing, they're having a good time, Jimmy turns to Henry and he says, "Forget about tonight." Like, like he kind of like it's interesting because he kind of lies or is deceitful to Henry here, which is a big indication that I don't know, like Jimmy doesn't trust anybody, even people in his own circle now. Um, like he's even keeping like Henry at sort of like arm's length with this.
Right.
Um, and yeah, that is something that happened in the book too. Like as they were entering this like sort of like restaurant, he does turn to Henry and he's like, "Forget about tonight." And that like Henry described that as like a weight lifted off his shoulders.
Hmm. Right. Well, and it's, and yeah, Maury is, he's kind of annoying, and he's just a fucking ball breaker, but like he's likable, like he's funny, he's not like really mean to anybody, or like racist or beats up anybody. He's just kind of this like lovable character. Well, I mean, and definitely like annoying, but like kind of just like that kind of annoying, slightly annoying friend. Um, and I feel bad for his wife, her coming home. He hasn't been gone. He's never been gone a whole night.
You're talking
That
about Frances McDormand on crack? That woman?
dude, yeah, yeah. That always like, because I saw, it, I was like, oh, this is 1990. I was like, no, this isn't Frances
It's not.
McDormand,
Yeah, it's
but
not
it
Frances.
totally, totally does look like her. Um, and this is kind of the beginning of the end for this whole Lufthansa crew. Basically the end for everybody, because they start finding bodies in fucking dumpsters and freezers. We find Frenchie and Carbone. Man, the one with Carbone, they're like, he was so frozen they had to thaw him out in order to do the autopsy or something.
Yeah, that's legit. Yeah.
Phew, he'd been in there so long. Like, how long you have to freeze something like that, and like that's just, and I'm sure you probably collected information, but like, was it just that Jimmy didn't want anybody finding out about this, or was it keeping the money mainly? I know it's probably both, but
Yeah. It is a bit of both. So like Jimmy, I can't remember, but there was an accounting of it in the book. Like so Jimmy didn't really end up parting with a lot of the money. Like he obviously gave his tribute to Paulie, and he gave it to so Henry did not get any, or he got a very little like small amount of it. Like he didn't really want it, which is kind of weird, I thought. But whatever. But yeah, like Jimmy really kind of like held on to the money, and people he did not part with it, and yeah, he got very very paranoid. He like a lot of these people really ended up dead because like you said, loose lips sink ships, and um, that's all there is to it. I mean, like Jimmy turned into a real like fuck with this Lufthansa thing, man. Like it was crazy. They by the way, the guy in the car with his wife, I guess
Johnny
it's
Roast
Johnny.
Beef.
I guess Johnny Roast Beef, yeah, with his wife. Did you know what happened with this?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that something got back to his mom, and she thought he was really dead.
Yeah, his mother. So in the behind the scenes, so I guess a behind the scenes photo leaked and it got printed in the newspaper. And his mother, that was the first time, like his mother saw it and she freaked the fuck out. Like
Man, poor
she thought it
lady.
was a real, yeah, she thought it was a real thing. And oh man,
um but yeah, we find everybody, he says, I never saw Jimmy so happy. The Lufthansa thing started finally settling down. But what comes up must come down. And, we ultimately see Tommy getting ready for his, I guess, confirmation, whatever you want to call it. Um, and I love his mom saying, like, you look so handsome. Congratulations. It's like, I feel so bad for his mom, like having to be told, like, yeah, that was the last time you saw your son. Now he's dead. And, man, just fucking awful. And, I know they talk about having a closed casket. They basically, it was empty. They don't know. They never found him. They never found Tommy in real life. I guess his remains are still never been recovered. And he's fucking for sure dead, according to Henry Hill. But I guess he could still be alive. There's no body. No, I'm just kidding. He's fucking dead. And where he's like, I don't know, there's just no glamour and glitz. They take him to a house, it's a nicer house. Like they take him to a house somewhere, and it's not some big fancy party or anything. There's nobody there. and it's just quiet. It's so like, I don't know, this eerie shot of when they pull into the garage and it just kind of like pulls back, and it's
Oh
kind of
yeah,
creepy. It's just this foreboding sense of like danger when you see it. It's this top down kind of like he's entering the mouth of this thing. Um, and Tommy's killed. It was revenge for Billy Bats and all the other shit. You know, he killed a made man. He wasn't made. He knew the rules. And honestly, like you said, for a lot of other shit too. Um, and as Floyd said, talking about Jimmy and Jimmy's reaction to this, man, fucking kicks the phone booth over. Like that's more
dude.
emotion in one scene than he has like the whole fucking movie.
This is where De Niro earns his paycheck, right? Like fuck.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's, you know, his level of dedication to this, of like wanting to know how Jimmy Conway got ketchup out of a bottle, you know, and shit like that. Like he was
Yeah,
really, really meticulous about wanting to know how he would react to stuff. Um, and I don't know, you get a sense that like for Jimmy, like I think a lot of these guys are like, it's the mob, and like, you know, whatever. If I get busted, I'll just rat people out or blah blah blah. And it's like Jimmy disobeys the rules and he deals drugs, and he's not like a line. He doesn't walk the line totally. But there is something that like Jimmy does take this, like he respects it, like he does take it seriously. And I like the fact that Jimmy is kind of you know, like there's a hierarchy and he respects it, versus like a lot of these, like, you know, but that's why Jimmy is alive and Tommy's not. You know, like Jimmy would never whack a made guy. Jimmy would never rat on anybody. Like he is kind of like the purest gangster out of like a lot of them. Like him and Paulie are very. It's like these shades of like Paulie is like like just top tier gangster, and then Jimmy, and then Henry, and then Tommy. It's just this decaying kind of line of like honor between them. Um, and you know, again, that's the death of Tommy. We cut to, was this May 11th, 1980?
1980.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is the
Um,
I call this the paranoia portion of the movie.
Right, dude. So I own this on YouTube. I bought it a long time ago, and this like, and sometimes when you're scrolling through YouTube videos, it'll show you what is the most played part of the video that people go back and repeat, and this is the most played part of this movie. Is him just frantically going around town trying to sell these guns, looking for helicopters, like. And it is like, I don't know, because I get so far into the movie, and then I always get bummed out when we start hitting this part. So like a lot of the times I'll just kind of like go watch something else, or kind of, you know, go play video games or something. So watching this again, I was like, oh shit, like yeah, I forgot how frantic this is. And it all takes, I don't know, it takes place over the course of like 12 hours or something,
Yeah,
maybe even less. Like I can't remember.
yeah. He had to
Um,
pick up his brother from hospital, and you know, he was cooking this meal, and yeah, he had to get. um, Jimmy had all these silencers that he wanted guns for, and when he delivered the guns, like Jimmy was like fucking rude about him. He's like, "Oh, these aren't gonna fit," like whatever. He talks about like this moment of sorry, Henry talks about this moment of like fuck, and then I realized I was out hundreds of dollars because Jimmy's not gonna pay me for these guns that I bought him, like, you know, like because they're wrong. And then like
bitching about hundreds of dollars of
right,
gun. It's like you're selling 60 grand in
right,
cocaine. Like shut
right.
up.
And yeah, he describes like going to the hospital, and he nearly actually did get into that car accident. And he gets there, and his brother's like looks at him and is like, "You look run down. When was the last time you slept, man? Like Jesus."
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the while this helicopter's like buzzing overhead, and
Hmm.
because he's like you know, local law enforcement don't have the budget for helicopters, so he assumes it's the FBI.
Right. Which is, I mean, fair to. Do they ever even say if this is like the FBI? Like, or is it just a coincidence? I can't really remember.
I I don't know. They never say, but I think the timing of it, the timing of like, you know, them going to collect her hat and him backing out of the driveway and like being surrounded by FBI or police. I think it's safe to assume it's FBI.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I kind of thought so, but I honestly could not remember. Um, oh, I mean, what did you think about this? Like the first time that you saw it, just this frantic back and forth, and the, the cooking the dinner, picking up his brother, going to the hospital. It's like, fuck, man.
Yeah, what got me was just how dedicated he is to the sauce.
Yeah,
Like,
the veal
like,
cutlets and stuff.
dude, I love it, man. But yeah, no, this is incredibly, like, it's like whiplash over and over again. It's like, holy shit, man. Like, there's a lot going on. Like, the music playing in the background, him frantically, him sweating. He's got the bags under his eyes,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's a lot, and the book, in the book, is like, there's more to this because he's thinking about how when he goes to, what's his girlfriend's name again?
Sandy.
Yeah, when he goes to Sandy's place, he's thinking about, like, fuck me, like, she's gonna want me to stay for dinner, like, she's gonna, like like it's gonna be this, like, big drama, like, how am I gonna, like, try and get away from her, whatever. Um, and yeah, like, it's actually more stressful in the book, dude. I read this section so quick because it's so stressful and it's so propulsive. Um,
Oof,
but yeah, man,
man.
like, yeah, her. So he is driving around with Karen, like, driving into shopping centers and stuff like that, and to try and lose the tail. And oof, yeah, and yeah, it all comes undone when I think her name is Judy Wicks. I think that was the name of the babysitter. When
Oh, the
she's
real.
like,
Okay.
yeah, when she's like, I will not go without my hat, which is real. Like that, she's she won't travel without the hat. So what do? They go out and like, get the hat. In the meantime, like, while they're out delivering the guns and stuff like that, she's talking on the phone, even though she
Yeah.
was specifically told not to. Like, it's a whole mess. It's an absolute mess, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, and again, just the people that can't obey like the rule of like how much longer would it have taken you to go and find an outside line, and it's like she's not in the mob, like I get it, but it's like that's even more reason of like you should not be doing business with some woman from Pittsburgh who's your babysitter. Like she's not a professional. Like she's not, she's not going to do the things that you and Tommy and Jimmy would do. um and yeah, it ultimately ends up being one of the many things that leads to the downfall of Henry Hill. Yeah, he gets off the phone with her and he's like, listen to me, you little hick. And when he hangs up, she's what does he say? He's like, what the fuck, man? All the girls in my life, I swear to God. Like, and his wife is in the fucking room. Unfucking leavable. Every girl in my life, every one of them. So what
So
does she go
Sandy's
at?
real name. Oh, Sandy's real name was Robin Cooperman. And sorry, my apologies for interrupting, but like, we're talking about, like, so Beansy is here, right? Like, Beansy from
Uh-huh.
Sopranos. He's the guy that's buying the guns. That fuck. Sorry, he's not buying the guns. He's like, kind of like the drug dealer. Like, he's kind of like,
Yeah.
he is a partner, and like, this is real. So he did have a partner in this sort of enterprise. Um and what happened was, the way the cops got onto the Lufthansa heist, the way the cops got onto Henry Hill, is this guy's son ratted them out. This
Mm.
guy's this guy's son was up for something. I think it was a drug bust or something. I don't know. I can't remember. But the cops essentially put the screws to him and was like, he's 19 years old. And he's like, yeah, look, I can give you kind of everyone. I can give you Henry Hill. I can give you, like, this organized crime drug deal ring that's kind of like happening under your nose. So yeah, like, this guy's son brought down everybody, which is wild.
That's fucking cool. Well, yeah, and it ended up being he was the one that got the scent, that gave him
Yeah.
the scent to go after him. Um, what does she do after she hangs up with me? After everything I told her, after all that, yeah, bullshit, she picks up and calls from the house. Now, if anybody's listening, they know everything. They know that there was a package leaving from my house. They'd even have the time and flight number. It's like, fuck, man. So much of that. Like, just I don't know, it blows my mind because it's like by today's standards, it's like of course you would never do anything like that, like over
Sure.
an unsecured line, but it's like 1980. I just don't think people took that as like seriously. um Henry goes and gets the stuff from Sandy, shows back up, and she says, "Oh, I need my lucky hat." Oh, I do love when he leaves and runs out on Sandy, and she's like, "Fuck you, you lying son of a bitch," and he runs away. That part always makes me laugh. The family eat dinner, and again, just like how hollow and empty it feels now. Like a dinner at Polly's, there was like kids running around, and it was like wood furniture and like old houses and people laughing, and now it's like 6 or 7 people at a table, and it's this like really cold modern kind of like room, and it just doesn't feel like this is the last kind of meal that we see eaten in this movie. And I think that you
Definitely.
can tell a lot about what's going on in the state of the movie by the meals being eaten. Like at the beginning in the 50s, they're just eating like bratwurst on a bun in somebody's backyard. It's nothing fancy. And then later on, it starts getting more lavish and more. And now it's just this like empty, dead kind of meal. Like there's no conversation. It's quiet. Everybody's just kind of like staring off. It's fucking depressing. Um,
One thing that I wanted to mention, that was actually a pretty big part of Henry Hill's crimes was point shaving. Um, the
oh
the
yeah.
basketball point shaving. So this was pretty big. Essentially, what had happened is he'd kind of like gone to, I think it was like the Boston College, and there was a guy who had these two kids. And they were playing basketball, and they'd agreed to essentially not fully like throw games, but to either get over or under the spread. So
Hmm.
Jimmy and Paulie and Henry would kind of go in and like bet massive sums, and they would make like these bets in different places. So they'd go to Atlantic City, they'd go to Vegas, and place all these like cash bets. And the first time it didn't happen because the one of the kids was like, I'm not doing this, I don't agree. And then the second time, like it happened, and they made so much money, and eventually got to the point of like, um, like then they started to throw games, and like they really weren't like performing as well as they should have been.
Hmm.
Um, and McDonald, who was the prosecutor, was like, "Yeah, Henry Hill's wrongdoing got so ridiculous that he kind of like stopped realizing what he like that he had done illegal things." So he he pointed out like the point shaving thing as if it wasn't even a crime. Like he's like, "Oh yeah, and I did this too," but like to him it wasn't a crime. To him it was just like something
Right.
entrepreneurial, you know?
Nobody got hurt. There was no
Right.
violent. He's like, "Oh no, yeah, that's just a thing I'm doing." I'm like, that is also
Wow.
illegal. He's like, "Really?"
Yeah. Right.
Um, Henry gets busted. I knew they were cops. If they were wise guys, I'd be dead already. Ends up going to jail. They bring in dude. I just want to punch her in the face. I'm sorry when they're bringing in Lois in handcuffs and she goes sorry and like makes this face at Henry. I'm like, are you just ruined? You just changed my life irrevocably for the worst. And you're like, I mean, and don't get me wrong, Henry's actions are his own, but it's like you're also a part of this. Like you're part of the reason that all this shit went down. uh Karen's mom has to put her house up as a collateral to get Henry out. He says, "I'm dead in here either way. If they find out like what's going on, I got to get everything straightened out with Polly." He comes back home, starts looking around for the coke, and he's like, "Where's that stuff I left?" I flushed it down the toilet, and it's like the
Fuck.
look on his when he comes back up, and he's like, what did you like the look of just ultimate like no you're dead now, you're fucking dead, like you owe people money, like you're dealing drugs in the mob and now you've been caught doing it, like dude well I don't know if he owes anybody money but now he's broke, like now you have fucking nothing, like
Yeah,
no
no,
money at all.
I don't think he owed anyone money at this point. He was kind of like trying to come up with um just money to like buy himself out, like to get out of there. Like you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
he in his mind he was like, okay, this person owes me money, this person owes me money. I've got this money stashed like at home, and it
Right.
like using this we can make our escape, we can exit. You know,
Right.
and it just it yeah it didn't happen. Like him confronting her in that house and like slamming his hand on the tiles and some of the tiles falling away. Oh,
Yeah.
crazy, man.
Oh yeah, and
And
her
and then
like
like her starting to get scared and afraid and crying based on how much he is over
right.
like reacting. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's such a wild scene.
Because he's been so like cool, calm, and collect, and has an answer for everything. And he's like, "Don't
Right.
worry about it. I'm gonna get us out of here." And it's like just, and now he's screaming and
She's
smashing
like,
the
"Oh my
walls, and it's like,
god." Yeah, like
yeah,
it's
now you're fucking dead. Um, he goes to see Paulie. He basically says, "I'm ashamed. I fucked up, but I need your help. I really do." And what does he do? He's just sitting in the back of a restaurant cooking some sausages. And it's like when you look at Paulie, it's never these like, bottles of champagne and expensive cars and jewelry. And it's like just these simple things that you see him doing. He has like simple dinners and goes and cooks in a restaurant, and that's it. And he tells him, you treated me like a fucking jerk. You lied to me. Now I got
he's
to let you go.
heartbroken. Yeah.
Yeah. The look on his face, I
Now I got to turn
love.
my back on you.
Now I got to turn my back on you. And he looks at him and he just goes, and he kind of shrugs. He's like, sorry, and that's it. It's like, oh my God. What
Yeah.
does he say? $3,800 for a lifetime. It's not, wouldn't
Right.
even be enough for the coffin.
Right, exactly. Now Henry doesn't have the protection from cops, from judges, whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing. In the book, this conversation took place between Paul Vario and Karen. It was not
Mm.
Henry. Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. But yeah, basically, he's cut loose now. Karen goes to see Jimmy, and he gives her a little bit of money. And this is where things start to get like really fucking scary. Like, and
Oof.
and sometimes I think that there's people that still debate this because it's ambiguous, but I feel like it's definitely leading towards it, like 60-40. Like they are gonna kill her and they aren't going to kill her. When she starts going down to this like swag warehouse on the corner, and there's just these two dudes in it, these like fucking boxer types. It's like, holy shit.
I was paying attention to this moment in the book very, very carefully because of what you just said, because there is a little bit of a debate as to what like whether he was gonna kill her. In the book, she describes like the men, like she does recognize one of the men inside the store, and like she says that I knew that this guy had gone on hits with Jimmy. Like this guy,
Mm,
like Jimmy did use this guy for work, and that is kind of like foreboding in itself. Like holy
sure.
shit. But it's so this scene is so fucking good, man. Like De Niro's so good, just like standing out there, like yeah, it's just in there. Come
Uh
on,
huh.
like, and he does the thing with his hand. He's like, like
Yeah.
it's good
Go
stuff,
in.
man. Yeah,
I think the telltale sign that seals it for me is when she starts running back to the car, the camera comes up and the "don't walk" sign is flashing. Like it's on the street corner. It reminded me a lot of American Psycho when he walks with that woman and it's flashing "don't walk" the whole time. But if you
mm-hmm.
watch Karen when she makes the decision to run for her car, the camera comes up, it passes the street sign, and it's
That's
literally
cool.
lit
I
up
never
"don't
noticed that
walk."
before.
And
That's
I was like,
awesome. I just saw that shot. Yeah, that's
I
sick.
I I don't know. I feel like that's kind of confirmation, but like, why put it in there? I get it to show that that's the level of paranoia that they're at, because now everybody has incentive to whack you, and that's kind of what we're going to get into here with Jimmy and Henry having lunch together. I'd gotten there 15 minutes early, and he was already there waiting for me. It's like, fuck, dude,
Yeah,
that's just.
he
Oof.
sat at the back of the restaurant, so he could see everything. He can see everything that's happening in the restaurant. He can see everyone pulling in. Yeah,
Hmm.
this is legit.
Yeah. And this is you can feel the walls start closing in. And he talks about, I think you've got a pretty good case, what I've been telling you your whole life, don't talk on the fucking phone, very much so like Polly. And Jimmy lays it out. He's like, hey, I'm gonna need you to go and take care of this guy who ratted on everybody for us. Would you be able to do that? And Henry just, yeah, no
Down in
problem.
Florida.
And down in Florida, yeah. And he's like, you wouldn't mind doing that for us? He's like, no. And he's like, and that's when I knew if I went down to Florida, I was not coming back. Um, And again, it could be the paranoia, but here's the thing: is I'd rather pull that trigger early than not. Then it's like, well, maybe I don't know, but at least I got out of there. But now I do know, but I'm dead. You know what I mean? Like, at least he got out early enough. And it sucks because here we are. It's like Tommy's dead. We're going to prison. A lot of people are dead. Over just all this bullshit. We have a meeting with the I think the DA, the actual DA that caught Henry Hill, right? McDonald,
McDonald,
the guy,
yeah.
the guy who he's like, if he's legitimately bronchial, we'll take that into consideration. Like that guy. And he basically says, we need Henry. He's like, I don't really need you, but if it makes him a better witness, a more cooperative witness, then, it would be better for you guys to come along. But either way, they're going to get to Henry by getting to you or through the kids. So it's like, it's probably better that we take, all of you out. But this is where it really starts to hit. The reality of the situation starts to hit Karen, where she's like, yeah, I won't ever see my parents again. Like, you can't see anybody. And they're trying to bargain. She's trying to get out of it, and it's like, guys, this is what it is. You got to cross this bridge now because there are no other options left.
Yeah, I know, definitely. And this causes this is the decision that Henry makes. I'm gonna read this. This is from the book. It says, on May 27th, 1980, Henry Hill signed an agreement with the United States Department of Justice Organized Crime Strike Force that read, this will serve to confirm the agreement reached between Henry Hill and the Organized Crime Strike Force for the Eastern District of New York. This office is conducting an investigation of possible illegal activities on the part of James Burke, Angelo Sepe, and others in connection with the theft of several $1 million in cash and jewelry from the Lufthansa cargo building at JFK Airport. You have agreed to inform officials of the Department of Justice of everything you know concerning the above-mentioned crimes and any other criminal activity in which James Burke and Angelo Sepe have participated. In addition, you have agreed to testify, if called, before all federal grand and petit juries hearing these matters. It is understood that no information or testimony given by you or evidence derived from information or testimony given by you will be used against you in any criminal proceeding other than as indicated below. As you know, at the present time, you are under investigation for your involvement in the robbery at the Lufthansa cargo building. It is understood that this office will forego any prosecution of you which could arise out of this matter in light of your cooperation in these matters. In the event that any other law enforcement authorities contemplate prosecuting you in connection with your involvement in the Lufthansa robbery, we will recommend they do so. In addition, it is understood that this office will forego any federal prosecution of you which could arise out of a narcotic investigation presently being conducted by the Nassau Country District Attorney's Office and in connection in which we were arrested. This agreement goes on for a while, but essentially it's all like, we will let, if you are being prosecuted, we will, by another office, we will let them know that you are state's witness, that you did cooperate with us, that you did help us out. So yeah, this is why. What do you think? Actually, a question for you. What do you think about him going state's witness? This is like turning on his friends and all that stuff. It depends on where you stand in terms of because he's not loyal, but he does what's best for his family. It's very Scorsese describes it as, I wanted to explore the what's between black and white. I wanted to explore the gray, right? Him kind of exploring this whole thing with Henry and him turning state witness. How do you feel about that as a character for Henry?
I mean, the reason why a lot of this shit works with guys in the mob and why Witsec works is because a lot of people that go into the mob is it's outside the system. It's cutting corners, and it's a kind of an easy way out. It's not an easy life, but if you don't want to have to work for somebody and, play the game of life, you don't have to do that, but you're going to have to deal with a whole other line of work. And I'm not saying it's easy being a criminal, but what does he say in the Bronx Tale? Robert De Niro, he's like, no, you think that this guy's awesome because he wakes up and he pulls a trigger. He's like, being a man is getting up and going to work every day and not pulling the trigger. That's the whole thing. So it's like these people that turn like Henry to Witsec, it doesn't surprise me at all, because it's like, well, you didn't become a mobster because you wanted the respect and you enjoyed the camaraderie of it and you thought it was a good blah blah blah. Like, you did it for money. You did it. You've been taking shortcuts. Basically, you've been taking shortcuts your whole life. Why would you stop now? Why would you stop? This is the easiest, basically a win-win for you. You don't go to jail and you don't die. And then it's like, of course you're going to choose that. But I mean, who in their right mind wouldn't? Like, who in their right mind wouldn't rather live and just relocate to Montana than, either go to prison where you got to watch your back for the next 25 years, or where you go home and you get shot in the fucking head. I can't blame anybody for ratting everyone out, but it's this kind of like false, like braggadocio, I don't know, kind of thing that they all have of like, yeah, you keep your fucking mouth shut. And it's like 7 out of 10 of you would sing within the hour. Like most of you probably would, because that's who you are. Like you have no loyalty. You have no respect. Most of them don't. I really don't think Jimmy would ever snitch. I really honestly don't. But Tommy probably, I feel like Jimmy would never. Tommy, it would take a long time, but Henry, he basically got one strong push and he was, yeah, I'll flip over and show you my belly, and it's like all that talk for just keeping your mouth shut and family. And it's like most of these guys would sell their own fucking mother down the river if it meant they didn't have to FaceTime or have to deal with it in some negative way.
Well, let's put this in Sopranos terms, right? So like Tony will never rat, right? Like he'll never flip. Neither will Paulie. Neither will fucking Silvio. But if you get someone like Bobby Bucglieri, like if you get someone like, well, Pussy fucking did, right? Like,
Or Chrissy Moltisanti.
Right. It doesn't have to be the top guy, but it like in this case, it definitely helps to have someone in the middle who has access to the lower and the higher echelon of this thing. Right. But yeah, I think you definitely said it correctly, man. Like this, like loyalty is a question in this movie, and it does get brought up, and like it is explored, especially loyalty between men. Like when we're in high school, like we have this thing of like, loyalty with your friends, whatever, blah blah. Mm-hmm. But then self-preservation comes into it when you get a bit older. Like you have kids, you have families, and then you have your own life, you have a career, you have like your own values and morals that you need to stand by. In this case, I don't think it's values and morals. It's Henry was caught out. He was put into a position where he could escape, and very much like a cockroach, because I attribute Henry Hill as kind of like a cockroach. He finds his way out of situations very, very well. Like when, obviously going to prison and stuff like that, he made that work for himself. And here he is doing the dance of life and cutting corners, and turning to the only thing that would help him, which is the government, Yeah. Because even in the book, there's not much consideration for Karen and the children in making this decision. A lot of his decision is based on himself, on self-preservation.
Right. Which doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. And I think there's something.
I mean, I don't mean to besmirch the guy. The guy's dead, so I don't want to.
Yeah,
be
but
like,
still, it's like,
fuck this guy.
Don't sell your life story and then be mad when someone has opinions about it. It's like you're pretty sure you murdered people, so go fuck yourself. Like,
right.
But I think that it's kind of like somebody who just keeps jumping back and forth in sides on a war just because it's convenient to them and it's beneficial at their position at that time. And I think that that's the way, because Henry Hill went to Witsack, was in it, and then got kicked out pretty quickly because he was like selling drugs and shit. Like I don't think he lasted but like 5 years in witness protection or something like that. It really did not take him long to basically ruin his fucking life again.
He was still in while this book was being published. So Nicholas Pileggi, like he starts the book by like being like, yeah, like I had to take an FBI, like there was an FBI guard that like actually flew me to wherever he was being, like wherever he was living, and even then, like I didn't meet him at the place that he was living. He had to meet me at a neutral location and all this stuff, man. It was wild.
Do they ever say why was it, like, because he's able to come out and be pretty open and like public about it, and I guess where it's just everybody that had something to do with him died or they were already imprisoned. But it's like, I mean, I guess what, he really didn't start showing his face until like the 90s. So I guess most people, had been in prison or dead for a little while. But it's like, how did you not just get your head blown off?
Yeah.
Like doing this shit. You know what I mean? Like somebody's second cousin or son or somebody gets pissed off because you sent their dad to prison. Like, how do you not get murdered?
And even like the position, the places that that they that the police or the government were hiding them before they went to witness protection. Like it was still known that he was ratting. Like he said that we were being held in like Montauk, and like I googled it. I Google mapped it. Right, I'm like, how far is Montauk from Brooklyn? It's only like 2.5 hours, and I'm just like, they didn't like take this guy overseas or anything like that, or like even to a different state.
Wow.
It's still in New York.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess hide them right under their nose. Fuck it. I mean, maybe.
Yeah. I think ultimately they ended up going to like Phoenix or something. Like, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it is interesting hearing a few cases where that has worked out for people, where it's like, yeah, they went into WITSEC and then they were fine after that. They never really got into any trouble. But like, I think one of the guys, I was watching some kind of monster documentary, and one of the witness protection guys was like, almost all of them fuck up at some point and do something stupid because it's all they know. It's not like they can go and all of a sudden like, oh, I'll get a job and be a butcher, and it's like they don't know how. They don't even have like they have no work history, they have no credit, like they have nothing.
It's like what from fucking Shawshank, what's that old guy's name? Like all he knows is
Brooks.
Yeah, all he knows is the prison, right? So like he can't acclimate to real life.
Institutionalized,
Right, exactly. Or it could be pure luck, right? Like think about college from Sopranos, right? Like fucking Tony just happens to go up north to look at colleges and finds a guy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just literally just so happens to stumble into him like ass backwards. But Henry gets put on trial, really kind of winding everything down. I love the fourth wall break. I think that's so cool, and it feels really natural because he's been talking to us the whole time.
I've seen some people shit on this. I also really like it though.
I mean, I could see somebody not liking it for sure, but I really dig it because it's him stepping out of a story that was, and he's in a story that now is. Like he's telling you present day, and now it's all over, and it's like, I love that because it brings the story, like our timeline and the timeline of the story kind of merge. Yeah. And it's like, cool. Like it now we're all on the same page and what happened, and this is present day shit. But basically him getting roasted, and he's like, a rat will do anything to survive, won't it, Mr. Hill? Like, oh man, I don't know anything about being a rat. It's like, a little bit about being a rat. That's why you're alive. But there's something that has stuck with this movie forever that Dean said in LSG when he goes $3,800 for a lifetime. It wasn't even enough to cover the coffin. And Dean goes, hey, you're lucky he didn't shoot you in the back of the fucking head. And I'm like, oh yeah, I never thought about that. Like, That's always stuck with me. But the, just Henry Hill is incredibly lucky to have lived the life that he lived and
Oh
died
yeah.
of natural causes. And not of a drug overdose, not of a police shootout. Not that he was in a bunch of shootouts apparently, but like he's lucky he was never killed by police or another rival gang.
Well,
Like
natural causes, as far as natural causes from smoking
yeah,
too many cigarettes and getting cancer, guys.
yeah, and drinking like a fucking fish. Like apparently he was a really, and part of me does like honestly feel a little guilty for the guy, just the kind of life that he was raised in, where it's like you're dyslexic and you've got all these kids in this house, and he saw something that didn't make him go to school and made him money and earned him respect, and he went for it. And I would not be surprised if there were people along the way who told him, hey, don't do this. This is a bad idea, blah, 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 XYZ. But some people have to touch, even though you tell them the burner's hot, some people have to touch it to find out for themselves. And that's pretty much it for Goodfellas. And now it's all over, and I ordered eggplant parmesan when I got here, and I got egg noodles with ketchup. so disgusting.
Straight out of the book. That is that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I will never. I don't even have it playing. I'm watching Street Fighter right now, and I even never forget that eggplant. I ordered eggplant parmesan and got egg noodles and ketchup, or is it? I ordered chicken parm or something like that.
Spaghetti. Yeah.
Yeah, but man, that's I did it my way. The Sid Vicious cover. Apparently, he couldn't get the rights to Sinatra's. Thinking they went with Sid Vicious.
Oh, really? I love the way this movie ends with this little like everyone like that, like them kind of like shooting towards the screen. Like that is
right. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It just feels appropriate.
The Great Train Robbery. It's some kind of movie that apparently Scorsese. I think that happens at the end. It's a western.
It's cool.
And the guy shoots into the camera. But
it's just Tommy. I think it's not everyone, is it? Isn't it just Tommy?
Nah, yeah, it's just Tommy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's fucking Goodfellas, man.
Man,
I mean. That's it's been a long time coming, and I'm glad we finally got the chance to do it, and we got I don't have any final thoughts. I'm tapped.
I feel like my only objective when we came up on this episode was I really wanted to give the movie the respect that it deserved.
Right,
and I think we did. We kind of left like no stone left unturned here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel very good about this episode. I think this might be one of our best ones probably ever in our history. I'm very happy with this.
I enjoyed it. It was part film nerd, part history class,
Mm-hmm.
and I like that, because it's like there's only so much that you can really learn that we can tell you about. Oh, well, they used whenever they did the whole wraparound shot in the Copacabana, the reason Henry has to point at the stage is because the cinematographer literally didn't know where the stage was. He's like, I need you to point me so I can see.
The little
and
tap.
I think that comedian ended up fucking up a few times. They would shoot that whole scene and then he would fuck up somehow, and it would they'd have to reset and do it all over again.
Yeah, it's Irvin Winkler who describes that scene, and he's like, "Yeah, we had to keep going through. We did that so many times, and because he would come out and he's like, take my wife, and he said it so many times, apparently just became really rote. But yeah, I love every time I watch this scene, dude. No matter who I watch this movie with, I keep pointing it out. I'm like, hey, you see that? You see how Henry nudges Karen and he's like, look up there. He's not nudging Karen for Karen. He's nudging it so the cinematographer knows to turn.
Right. I love it. There's so many little secrets, and the whole reason they went through the back of the Copacabana was out of necessity. Basically they had to. And there's so much. My point being, there's so much stuff about that stuff that that anybody can learn just by going on YouTube and stuff like that. But I'm more interested in talking about the movie itself and how it makes you feel versus fact versus fiction. I find that to be a lot more interesting, especially going over it with someone who's a lawyer, who sees it from a much more like
Not a very good one, but
yeah, well, whatever. Better lawyer than I am. Just seeing it from a more objective, like lawful kind of view. It's like technically not illegal. There's a lot of stuff that I feel like either Henry Hill is leaving I don't know, a little too much stuff out.
I love,
or
I know what
he
you're
just
saying. Yeah,
barely. Well, I didn't kill anybody, but I also didn't keep my note. Like he just barely went in between that line of not
100%.
being a murderer. But
I think what comes through more on this episode, more than me being a lawyer, is my love for true crime. Like I, not to brag, but I have a criminology master's, and I think that's what's coming through. I was just like, yeah, I think this is just the world that I love. I love this world. I love diving into the nitty gritty of this shit, man. Like why criminals do what they do. That is so fascinating to me.
Same here, and especially organized crime and the conspiracy behind it, and the power that it once wielded is super interesting. It's definitely a topic I'd like to dig back into someday.
And steel wheels, by the way, the 5 families in New York is still a thing. We also have the mafia here in Australia.
Not Italian though, right?
Yeah, Italian. Yeah. The Ndrangheta. We have the Italian mafia here. Yeah, it's crazy.
Huh. Interesting. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us. Guys, this has been a blast. We've had a lot of fun doing this. Thank you to everyone who commented. Sorry if we didn't get to everybody's comments. This was a girthy episode. And
a lot of length on this one too. Felt this up near my diaphragm.
we enjoyed every inch of this podcast, but it was a lot of fun. You only get to cover movies like this once, so I'm glad we had a big blowout 4th of July birthday bash kind of thing, set off all the fireworks and invited everybody over. We hope you enjoyed it. If this is one of your first times listening, thanks for hanging out all the way to the end. If you want to catch more of our stuff, our socials are in the show notes, but always stop by, rate and review the show on iTunes. Let us know how we're doing, and we will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.